2. You're instructed.
You all set? You all set to go?
Good to go.
Hey, great, thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the September 11th, 2018 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. We have 2 rules only, and one is that we invite everybody to speak, ask questions, make comments, but you have to use a microphone and introduce yourselves so that you can be recorded on our magic tape recorder here. That's part of the open meeting law. And the second one is, as a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan.
Hans Van Lingen.
And Steve Ives, Conservation Agent.
Thank you. So we can proceed. Item 1 on the agenda is informational. This is 170 Center Street, Milton Academy. For the 27th year in a row?
I think so, yeah.
Welcome.
27, yeah, well, it's 97 we started meeting, so. My name is Brandon Fagan, I work for GEI. I represent Milton Academy. We're with me tonight is Jim Spinoy. He's the Director of Facilities at Milton Academy. Informational session. This is an informational session that began in 1997 under an order of conditions for remediation of the site. We come before the board every year to review the conditions of the site as a matter of information. So if there's any changes in activity and development of the property, we update you.
Just mention to people what the original problem was that you're remediating. Other people haven't been here for 20 years.
Right, the original source impact was a number 6 fuel oil tank that was located behind Robin's house in the back of the academy. There was a fuel oil spill related to that. Fuel oil migrated down the hill and impacted O'Hare Pond. The abatement program for it was to install a high-density polyethylene gate system, barrier and gate system. There was a product recovery system that was ineffective and actually had some impacts related to it, which was brought offline, but the infrastructure was maintained. We closed down the pumping systems on the facility back about 15, 20 years ago at this point. And we've been monitoring the gate operations and conducting hole removal by belt skimmers, vacuum trucks, and pad absorbent materials for the last essentially 20 years. The current plan right now, which is a change and deviation from what we've done in the past, is to evaluate under the new state's regulations related to evaluating microscale mobility in wells. The product recovery in the site has been effective in reducing all but 4 wells of free product. 2 of those wells are below the state's original older dated half-inch criteria. They're 0.01, 0.05 thickness, which is acceptable under the MCP for closure. However, we have 2 other wells, RW2 and Kai 102, that have got product in them. In order to evaluate those and as part of the program to maintain a site without active recovery and consider it for monitoring, you have to demonstrate that the wells have transmissivities below 0.8 feet per day. Currently, next week, we're conducting a microscale mobility test with a Hawk system. The Hawk system is designed to evaluate product mobility, not groundwater mobility, but product mobility into the wells and recovery. The active gate system is still in place. The gate structures are still in place. This program is designed to eliminate continued vacuum recovery, continued pumping with respect to the belt skimmer operations. At this point, we're finding that if the transmissivity is effective, we want to demonstrate that there's no need to continue those 2 activities. That doesn't mitigate, general activity, but it does change Milton Academy's role in the process of having to monitor the equipment systems on a weekly and monthly basis. That will then be scaled back to GEI conducting groundwater monitoring. The Academy will still be maintaining the outfall locations, the 2 that we maintain with the standard pipes in them, and the general maintenance of the wetlands. One activity we still have the booms in the pond. We've removed the sorbent booms, but we still have the containment boom that floats in event of a fugitive emission situation. That hasn't occurred in the last 8 years. We haven't seen any product in the pond, so that's effective. But we still keep that boom in place. In terms of the transmissivity program, what'll happen is you have this report that we sent you. In here is an explanation of what we intend to do, which notifies the DEP of the pending activity. We conduct the activity, and then the findings will be reported in the December-January report. And should be necessary, if the transmissivity results are positive, then that'll mitigate continued product recovery specific to the 4 wells that are out there. And then other maintenance activity will still be maintained for everything else. So as it relates to the order of conditions and management thereof and the conditions in the order, we're not changing anything. This is more on the DEP level in terms of product recovery, just because we don't have the kind of product we've had out in the years. So it's all good news. That's really it in summary.
What about the detention pond at the edge of O'Hare Pond? Has that been cleaned out?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was mentioning. They do a fall clean out, and the one right at the tennis courts on the corner, that's going to get a clean out. I talked to Steve Zanino today, just because that, with the invasive species, have kind of gotten real aggressive over in there. You'll notice in the report, the DP2 location, we don't monitor because the poison ivy would be like walking through a gauntlet. So come fall, we're gonna, leaves fall off, we're gonna pull all the vines out that are there, and then cut back some of the trees so we keep that clean. The story pole's been maintained, there's no sediment buildup, which is what, the key to that. But the overgrowth into it is, cascading a lot of foliage and detrital material. The boom's also got a lot of branches down on it. With the last season, we've had some heavy weather. So we'll be going in and cleaning out, the boom so when the pond comes back up along that edge that it floats back up.
What about the catch basins and piping that lead to the detention area?
So those get cleaned out. Those get a vac out every 3 or 4 years. We go in and pump back. Basically, we draw them down. Try to go in the drier part of the season because then they draw them down. And then we just put a Vector truck in. And we pump out all the sand that gets in them from the winter activity. They are part of the monitoring program, so they're in here in terms of data. So we do know when they start getting sediment buildup, and again, they're fit with T's in them. We haven't seen product in those, and again, back 7 years. We used to get an infiltration in the RW2 catch basin, the one right next to that, and that was because it's a precast concrete, so you get some leaching into it. That's why that was all set up for boom and pad recovery. That's been maintained. We haven't needed any pads in there for, again, 5 to 7 years. So on that level, the product is not migrating, and within the last 4 or 5 years, you hear a term natural zone depletion. There is, in the old days, we called it monitor natural attenuation, but they've been evaluating product in itself in terms of its degradation over the last 4 or 5 years, and the oil industry recognizes in the presence of oxygen and the presence of nutrients, in the presence of bacteria, products do decay, volumes of product do decay out on sites because of that natural degradation. That wasn't typically in the past brought into the value of remediation. It was just more of targeting groundwater conditions and the groundwater impacts, which fortunately, because this is a 6 oil, there's very little fractional distillates that partition into the water. And as the report shows, we monitor groundwater, pretty regularly. And since the original program, we're almost meeting GW1 standards, which is a drinking water standard on the site, which is good news. But we're not, and we've always met GW2, GW3. GW2's geared towards buildings present within 30 feet and the water table less than 15 feet. GW3 is all groundwaters of Massachusetts. GW1 is water quality district, zone 1, zone 2 groundwater conditions. The water quality, believe it or not, even the presence of the oil, because it's so heavy, it doesn't partition to the water, which has been good. The ponds looks good. So we haven't had any problems with it.
Is there any way to estimate what's still there?
you could go out and do quite a bit of investigation.
I'm not asking you to, but
Yeah.
do you have that?
Yeah, not really. I mean, you'd have to go back and look at there's ways of estimating them, but you gotta take soil data to look at them. I mean, I think back in the past, we estimated, I think it was between 5,000 and 7,000 gallons, product present at that time. How much is still left, you know? 6-oil doesn't degrade near as fast as like a gasoline or diesel fuel. I mean, it can get a spill, an open spill like Newport, a years ago spill. 3 weeks later, it's volatilized, most of it, even though you put booms in, it's really actually going in the atmosphere. So it's not as, you know, it's refined, but it's still closer to bunker C, you know, it's that type of fuel, you'll see it for a long time.
What sort of thicknesses are you seeing in the wells?
So almost, a majority of the site were less than a half an inch, but actually we have only 4 wells that
Yeah.
actually have more than less than a
Over
half an
half.
inch. 2 of them are 0.8 and 0.06, which is like that.
And does it float on the top, or?
Floats on the top, and it's specific gravities, you know, 0.95, 0.93, so it's gonna float.
Are the wells in proximity to each other, or are they scattered?
They're all within one zone.
They're all-
So MW1, RW2, and Chi 102 are, you know, it shows on the plan, they're all around the recovery well. And the reason those are where they are is the tanks were sitting up behind Robin's house. There's a catch basin system on the upper part. Catch basin system was backfilled with stone. The stone's backfilled to the drain, and then it chases that drain. And you still see the groundwater feature even to the extent I just drew it, just because I always keep track of it on the reports, but you can see the hump right here? That hump, this is Robin's house is up here. The water, basically, there's a drain that comes right around behind the oil tank building, and it causes that. Because the water moves fast through there because the quad, which is up high, has through drains. So the quad doesn't hold water against the foundations of the buildings. And then that water then, you know, comes out through that drainage system. That's why the recovery shed was put in where it was put in years ago. Because they recognized there was a lot more product there for some reason. When they did, it was a dug well, so it wasn't a drilled well. So when they dug it, they found all the stone, and then, you know, they started doing some homework back in the 70s, and they found out what was causing it, and that's why that was put where it was.
Now, you said you're gonna clear some vegetation, the poison ivy, that's fine, but what about
Yeah.
trees? You said something about.
No, I don't cut trees down, we prune them along the tennis courts. I need access to maintain the booms, so right behind the tennis courts, and we've done it every year. We clear about that 3 to 4 foot space
Okay.
behind the tennis courts and the trees above it. And then the other direction, the same thing, we clear out that whole corridor right behind the fence. So we can actually get down and manage the boom. And a lot of the trees that were, you know, 3 to 5 feet in 1997 are now, you know, a heck of a lot higher.
Should
So,
be. And how are the snapping turtles in the
I
pond?
don't see a lot of them anymore, but I'm not looking for them. I don't go out there, we're not out kind of invasively
Yeah.
out there. They're probably out there, just we don't do any speciation
Do you
studies.
know if the snapping turtles are still there?
Do I know? Yes, they
Can you
are.
come forward and just,
Sure.
thank you.
Sure. Yeah, we see them, they do their annual migration. They come out and they go right next to our paint shop and go into the mulch and
By the.
drop the eggs, and then the eggs turn into little baby turtles, and off they go. They do it, I want to say, I don't know the month. You know, I don't, like I
It's
say,
usually May or June. Have you
every
come
once
to
in a
them?
while, whatever time it is, you have to be careful, because they'll park behind your tires and stuff, and all of a sudden you hear this awful noise. So you have to be careful where they are. They do, they just kind of mosey around from this area back to the pond.
I'd like to know how many you're seeing. Maybe next year you
Sure.
can, have better, to see if the oil is impacting them after all this time. or
Generally, we don't
whatever.
have surface impact exposure. That means basically all of the excavation in the upper part was excavated and removed. So we have clean cover to 3 feet across the site. So, and then the wetlands were completely excavated by RW2. We took about 400 or 500 yards out of the wetlands that was oil impacted for that purpose of not having any exposure. Then the gate was put in so that we didn't get the flow-through migration. So, it really, higher order mammals are not impacted at all. I mean, even the benthics, which is the bugs in the top half an inch to an inch, and you're familiar, I'm sure, with that. That was another target goal of the remediation, was to maintain conditions for the worms, and we didn't, even at the time of after we got done the remediation, we didn't see any stress to the wetlands with a stage 1 ecological screening. So, which was, significant, and we're now 25 years later, so.
So do you see this getting you closer to a permanent solution? Or?
So, because the barriers exist and there is product present behind the barrier, the barrier represents an active solution. In order to close the site out, we would have to investigate within the existing zones and demonstrate that there was no risk. The presence of product in the active system generates a potential for risk.
Yes.
So the site stays in a temporary solution. We don't foresee a permanent solution. However, the O&M program, by intent of the investigation that we're doing in the next week, is to step back from a lot of the active conditions, because there's really, the gate's doing what it needs to do on its own without us present.
So ultimately, what will change, I guess is the question.
So what's going to change is that the Academy's groundwater monitoring and management is relegated back to quarterly monitoring, so that we can see what's happening. If there's a condition we need to respond to, we can respond to it. However, there won't be any active removal of product from the site. And then the maintenance of the system, those belt skimmer systems that we have out there, will stop. But again, it's subject to the results of this investigation.
Okay.
For instance, if the transmissivity demonstrates levels in exceedance of the microscale mobility standard, then we still have opportunities to address it, but in a different way. We have to demonstrate there's 4 different criteria. One's product volume, one's mobility, one's less than a specific level. And then your asymptotic decay characterization, in other words, product is decreasing with time. We have demonstrated 3 of those 4. You're all really responsible for 1. But the key one, right, for us is the transmissivity. So, because if the transmissivity isn't there for the product to move or migrate, then you really have the right in terms of ability to say, hey, we don't have to do anything because it's not going anywhere. But if it has a transmissivity that exceeds the standards and it's going somewhere, in an open scenario, you'd want to make sure that was the case. We're even backed up because we have a barrier. If we didn't have the barrier, then it might even be tougher argument if you didn't have the numbers, but it's still not that hard in the presence of the barrier, because nothing's getting through that. It's 80 mil high density polyethylene and it live past you and I. So that's the good news. And we haven't seen any indication that it's leaking in any form or shape. So that's it.
Any other questions?
Sorry to take so much time.
No, it's not. Any members of the public, abutters, or citizens that would like to ask a question? Hearing none, we thank you, and we'll see you next year. Next on the agenda is number 2, order of conditions, Milton Woods, 175 Governor Stoughton Lane. This is a matter that I will recuse myself from together with my law firm's relationship with Pulte Homes.
Yeah, there's someone here on behalf.
I didn't know if you wanted to discuss something.
No.
Mr. Rosati is
Come
here.
forward and please identify yourself. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Rosati. I work for the firm of Marshauner and Associates, who are the civil engineers who designed the Milton Woods project and sought all the permits through the Conservation Commission. So I was informed that you'd be discussing my project.
Yes. Our conservation agent had advised us that a lot of the ground that has been cleared, and I was out there today and looked at it, it's completely barren. Boulders are piled up, as is to be expected in such a big project, 20 homes. But the slopes as you come in, the soil looks like it's eroding. Some grass is on the right-hand side, that doesn't seem to be any on the other side, so it's very concerning with the heavy rains and, of course, winter coming in another couple of months, that ground gets stabilized. So that was our main concern. If you could address that initially.
Sure. So, we have had a very, very hot summer. And we established those slopes, and we're talking about the first 300 feet going into the development that's really the right-of-way of Unquity Road. Excuse me. So that was established early on in the project, and the idea was to try to stabilize that slope as quick as possible. And so the slopes were formed to a point. We still had the road to build. We still had electric utilities and curbing to put in. So we couldn't finish the slope all the way down to the bottom. I would say roughly the last 3 feet of the slope above the sidewalk was...
What did you use to stabilize it?
Right now, it was seeded, loomed and seeded, and there was an erosion control blanket put on, a coconut fiber blanket.
On both sides?
Yes. However, you didn't see that if you walked the site yesterday. So, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about what was coming up this fall and what we needed to stabilize. And the slope on the left side of the road didn't take. We had coconut blanket, and the sun was on that side of the site as opposed to the other side of the road, which is now very lush and a lot of vegetation. That also had a coconut blanket, which is still there. But with the heat, we determined that the heat was being trapped underneath the blanket and wasn't allowing the grass to grow on the left side of the road. So, we pulled the blanket up yesterday because, 2 days ago, because we had hired New England Environmental, or I think they're called Stamson now.
Something like that.
Yes, to come in and reseed and mulch the slope. So they're going to be doing that on Thursday. And so we intend that we're trying to get this done before the growing season ended so that we could get the slope established before the winter. And that's what we're doing on Thursday.
It's an extreme slope. I mean, it's 45 degrees or more. So
2-to-1 slope.
is it?
Yeah. So let me say this, since the time that, in the last week, the contractor who's with me here, Jeremy is with me here, has made a significant effort in getting the curbing finished, which came right after the electric being installed. So we now have a clear path to gravel the shoulder, put the sidewalk in, and then complete the slope so that, and I think we'd be able to do that in enough time for that vegetation to establish before the winter.
So when you say to mulch and seed, is that what you said, mulch and seed?
Seed and then mulch it, yes, so that we,
Mulch using what?
they're gonna use a bark mulch, they're gonna blow it on with with tackifier, I believe, so to keep the seed from washing down. off
Okay,
the
so you
slope.
are going to include tackifier in that?
Yes, I believe he is, yes.
Okay.
So, the slope is steep. We've gone through some serious rainstorms in that site, and...
That's not done,
I'm sorry?
and that's not done. I mean, we're
Yeah,
getting
so
into
I
storm
wanted to say that
season, so-
despite even that, the fact that it didn't
Yeah.
take, there hasn't been any serious erosion on that slope. That slope has, the whole site is really, has held up rather well, I think. Today and this week, the past 2 weeks, the site looks much better than it did. And we've been focusing the contractor on getting the slopes, and up until like a week ago, the slopes were almost vertical on the sides of the road, so they had now been cut back. All the excess material on most of the lots has been moved to the pile, which is continuously being crushed. And that material, after it gets crushed, is located on lot 17, I believe, which is just in the cul-de-sac on the right. That's really not a designated stockpile lot for us, so the contractor is committed to moving that to where it's supposed to go, which is on the pads that are at the very end of the cul-de-sac. That's the stockpile area.
Is your SWIP up to date?
Yes, I believe it is.
And you have records to reflect the SWIP inspections that were done or that's been completed to date?
So the SWIP inspection book for Pulte is done by the site super, who is not on site yet. So that has kind of fallen into my lap with Steve. So I emailed Steve after all the storm events to tell him that what I've visualized and try to keep him up to date on what we're doing for stabilization, temporary stabilization, I have pictures if you'd like me to show you the site, if you think you have time to see.
Yes, that would be helpful, yes, yeah. What does that acronym stand for?
Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. It's under the NIPD's program.
Yes. Let's see.
The other thing I was surprised about is how much the site is completely cleared.
So in the
No
past,
trees left at all on the lots.
yeah, we kind of told you that was going to be the case because of the grade changes and stuff, so.
Yeah.
But we are going to be planting more, the buffer zone that we can plant come November. I have that scheduled with New England Environmental.
Okay,
So
before
if you-
winter.
Yeah, if you recall, there was a buffer zone mitigation plan that we submitted to you
Uh-huh.
that we're following. And so the trees that are on the left and right side of the road as you're coming in, up to the first lot, those trees will be planted in November. We're trying to get other portions of the site where we can plant the trees done, and just to do that, if we can get them accomplished.
Does that go on automatically, do you know?
I am not
don't.
sure, but let's give it a try.
Okay.
Otherwise, we have Bill across
So-
the road.
Do you have a contingency plan in place in the event that you're not able to get the seed to take by,
So if for some reason the seed doesn't take, then we would probably mat it
Okay.
before the snow came.
okay, what's your breakdown? What's your drop dead date on that? Are you thinking,
Typically, I don't know, it's like the first or second week in November, we've had some growth still, you know?
okay.
Last year
Just
was a
want
good year.
I just want to make sure that you're not going to wait till the first or second week in November to decide, that you plan ahead on that and so that you have.
So, if we seed
Likelihood
it
in place.
Thursday,
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
by
It's a great
October
time to do
1st
it.
or something like that, we should start seeing fuzz and growth happening, and then that'll
Sure.
take off if the weather, keeps the way it normally does. And
Okay.
Yeah, you need to get that seed, I should think, in the ground by the end of this month. So you've got 2 weeks to go,
Yeah,
more or less.
we had aimed
Then you
to,
have maybe 4-6 weeks, good growing.
Yeah, the tackifier and mulch will probably be the most important part at this point. That's
and
what'll
if we-
hold it
If we
together.
have to spray tack again, I will say on these pictures you're gonna see, it's not 100% evident, but we had, absent of, we have a road that pitches downhill pretty significantly the whole way. So, when it rains, everything funnels to the road, and it created, up until a couple of weeks ago, gorges along the side of the embankment of the road, where the water was traveling. So that was happening because we had no curbing. So we are curbing the lower part of the site where the construction vehicles aren't going to need to get onto lots, which is about the first 600 or 700 feet of the road. And it's almost, I would say it's 70% complete right now. So what do we do on the upper sections where we have vehicles traveling back and forth over the road and onto the lots to move material around? So we created a berm is what we did out of wattles and bark shredded mulch.
Okay.
So you'll see in the picture how we accomplished that.
I don't know how to.
And so that intercepts any water that's flowing through and.
Well, what it does is it gives the water in the road, when it gets to the road, a place to run without ripping the side slopes into it, so it keeps the water away from the loose material on the side of the road. So it acts like a curb. And of course, it also mitigates water coming onto the road.
No. Sorry, won't work?
Oh, you got something?
You got it.
There we go, there we go. There's
it.
something.
All right.
So you want to describe what we're looking at here?
Yes, I will, because I can tell right now that I think the computer, my computer put everything in alphabetical order.
Is this appropriate place to start, or is there a better picture
Yeah,
to
so,
start?
sure, it's a good place. This is the back side of detention basin 4. And I'll just roll this out so you can kind of see where I'm talking about. So, here's, down here is Unquity Road, and this is the road coming in, and this is our first lot with the foundation on it right here. So this basin right here is basin number 4, and that is the back side of basin number 4 as it is formed at the silt fence line. So on the left is the silt fence, you can barely make it out. You see right
Here?
Yes, yeah,
there.
we can see
Right
it.
there.
Uh-huh.
Good.
And this is a 3-to-1 slope going up to the top of the berm. This is actually the berm for the basin. The
And this
basin
is
down
something that
here.
you formed to make the basin?
That's correct.
Okay.
This is also adjacent to, over here, is the restoration area that we did for the wetland crossing to bring the utilities to the roadway. So under this berm is water and sewer lines that run to the road.
Any idea how to advance it? I do not know.
Can you X out and then hit the next one? X, let's see.
Can't. You see any X's?
No, I don't.
Neither do I.
You might be able to just hit a right arrow.
Yeah.
Oh, right up here.
Oh,
Steve.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This one down.
Wonderful.
There you go.
Where would you like to go to?
The next one here, this is the
You wanna go
berm
to-
on basin number 5.
Okay.
So what we tried to do in the site as part of the
Thanks.
ongoing mitigation is to try to get as many of the basins built so that we can, if we need to, we use them as sediment control, and we also confine water if we need to, if it's, wants to leave the site dirty. So this is,
And these are just local weeds that are filled back in?
well, this was seeded, yes, and the weeds have taken over. So in this area here, you can see the coconut mesh here, and again, the sun has caused blotches for where it has taken off and where it hasn't. So, you know, if
Water
we
available
peel,
at the site?
Huh?
Is water available?
there is some limited water on site for spraying, which we use to keep the dust down, but
Not enough to irrigate?
not enough to, and this is in a remote area of the site. This would be,
Not for irrigation. Too far away. It's too far out.
we are coming into the wetter part of the year, so
Yeah,
I
so hopefully you
hope,
won't need it.
Right.
and the cooler part of the
Let's
year.
just see a couple of pictures from the entrance, where the slope, you know, if you can go down to,
Yeah,
like,
let's see, road.
maybe,
Yeah, how about, no, that's 12.
that's back.
There you go.
Right side, lot
Right
1,
from
2,
cat.
and 3, right in there, yes.
Where I am now? Take a look at that.
Okay, you can, so the cut slope is right up in here, you can barely see it, maybe in opposite lot 1. So here,
Okay.
well, since we got this is the curbing that was recently installed. This is loom that was placed on the top, on the shoulder and covered up all the dirt, all the mud and dirt that was here for a few months. And this was vegetated, the downslope was vegetated months ago. Again, trying to get whatever we can get done established, so that when we come to this time of year, we're filling in the pieces if we can.
Just so the public knows, part of the reason why we're so concerned about this is that slope down across Umpqua goes right into Pine Tree Brook. So if we let all this just continue, the whole brook would be filled up with silt, so
So
that's
I-
the issue we're dealing with.
And I want to kind of reassure you a little bit that I viewed the runoff coming down the lower end of this, and it's not all that bad. It's not very cloudy at all. And we do have all the catch basins up to grade down here, so the water is going into our sediment basin before it gets across the road. So
Are there any
here's,
areas where potential exposed slopes or slopes that aren't fully vegetated are graded towards in wetlands where have you checked to make sure that you're stable on any exposed soils that are flowing downhill?
yeah, we don't have
Not
any of
just
that
the road.
right now.
Yes.
Most of the slopes that are adjacent to the wetlands are vegetated or in their kind of natural, I won't say natural state. We stumped it, but we didn't.
You didn't
strip
take it? you-
Right.
Okay.
The only exception to that would be what happened 2 days ago when we built lot number 1. So the foundation went in. They backfilled around the foundation just Monday, and the instructions were, so on the left side of the house is a very shallow slope from the house to the limit of work. It's probably 10 or 15 feet long, and they've been instructed to mulch that with
Okay.
the stump grindings.
So you're paying attention to
During the
any,
construction, right.
Okay,
Right, so we
good.
want to cut that off because there is a potential of some water to run in that direction.
What I'd like to do now is not really continue because we have a lot on the agenda. But what I'd like to do is put this on our sidewalk, not for September, but for October, so that we could go by
Well, I think
in
it's-
October and see how things.
How about second week of November?
well,
Because
I'd like to
then
see
we'll have the
it
grassing,
in September as well, if we have the opportunity, I mean,
Okay.
towards the end of the
As
month.
well.
maybe September, and November.
In terms of using the stump grindings, the only caution I would say is to try not to go too thick on it, because then you run the risk of actually impeding growth. So you want to be cautious. It's a fine line, so it's
I-
just a recommendation.
I get that, but I've been told them to do just the opposite. Because we haven't seeded it yet, it's just raw, because the lots aren't built yet.
Yeah,
So we're going to end up, when somebody picks the lot, hopefully in the near future, they're going to destroy anything in the front of that lot. So the idea of having a thick bed of mulch is they can drive on it without really destroying it.
yeah, you're just going to have to yank it out.
Right. So
Yeah, so
we're
as long
going
as
to
you
have to pull it out,
understand that.
and then when we loom the front yards and we get it seeded at that point. But that won't be until next
Yeah.
spring.
Don't want to cover that over.
Yeah,
Do you want to say anything else?
No, I think that's good for now.
And if you'd like me to attend that meeting,
The sidewalk, yes,
Be
do
happy
go.
to.
Thank you, because we do need to monitor this.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. I think we might be looking at a sidewalk, the September one, for either this Saturday or the 29th. I can't do the 22nd, but the 29th. If that's a possibility,
Oh, I'll be back then.
of your grand travels, huh?
Right.
So let's think of the 29th as a possibility. Would that work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Nate.
Mr. Ivers will be in touch with you, and the
We've been talking a
time.
lot about these issues.
Okay.
So you should know that, by the
Okay,
way.
so if you put in some seed, it should be germinated up a little bit by then.
That'd be great.
we appreciate the responsiveness.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thanks for coming.
How about mid-November too?
Oh, here.
let's
Yeah,
decide that the next
germination.
time. Yeah, if we can do this 29th,
Thanks.
Arthur, and then the next one. Steve, can you tell John that we could have him come back? Yeah, it was pretty bad today when I was looking at it.
Yeah. But,
The roadway's clear though.
Yes, you should know that we've
The
been
what?
talking
The roadway's
a
clear.
lot since I
Excellent.
first
it's more at the,
realized.
so during a rain event.
It's almost
just keep
winter.
an eye on whether there's sediment transport happening.
Winter is coming.
Carrying. and-
Exactly.
Right,
As
Especially
as the
severe
ad
rains.
goes.
Yeah, so it's not just,
like we might get next week.
yeah, so that's why I was asking.
That's
if
the
there's
first time
any
I've ever
graded
used
slopes
the
going towards
machine.
That works pretty good.
And it worked great. Worked great.
You were able to go from the computer and get pictures up here.
Oh, yes.
So that was good.
Technology.
That's a lot of-
Technologies.
It's good when it works.
Yeah, right. Okay,
I shut it off.
number 3.
All right, number 3 on the agenda is notice of intent, 76 Cliff Road. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening, my name is Bridget Gaffney, I'm the owner, property owner at 76 Cliff Road. And we are interested in putting in a landscaping project that includes a pool and a patio surrounding it, and some planting beds as well. I think a lot of the materials have been distributed. We had a request for one more, which I brought tonight, which is the overlay of the plan on the survey.
I'll take it and pass it on. You want to keep one?
Oh, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Yeah, why don't we just pass it?
It's okay. Yeah, I get it.
How long have you been at the house?
Almost 2 years. We used to live 4 houses up the road, so we like the neighborhood.
Walking distance of everything now, huh?
It is. And the backyard space is between the 50 and 100-foot buffer zone, which is already here tonight.
And for the commission, the boundary of the property is actually beyond the top of the slope, so it's back from the top of the slope of the very steep hill that goes down to the Napontet River. I believe it's DCR that owns the land in between this property
Yes.
and the river. Extremely steep slope. So you can see the back of just behind the pool. And that's just before the slope drops down, pretty much at the 50-foot buffer, I would say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it moves around a little bit, but yes.
Exactly.
How many feet does it drop down?
20 plus? Oh, it's really, would you say 20 plus? Something like that, I would say.
Hence the name Cliff Road, huh?
I'm not as good at estimating distances, but so I'll go with yours.
Sure.
What's the depth of the pool in terms of, is there a foundation, is there a footing going in? Because you are close to a pretty steep hill, and we just went through this on Hillcroft. But actually, it's Cabot.
Yes.
Yeah, although Cabot Street's a lot closer than this one. But I'm just wondering if there's any way to tell how deep the excavation goes for the pool and how close that is to the drop-off. Because there's lateral pressure, the weight of the water is going to push laterally.
Yes, and we were leaning towards a fiberglass pool, so to deal with some of the flexibility of the bank there, I think. So we weren't looking at, I think, deeper than like a 6-foot pool. So the depths below that, I don't know the depths below that, they would have to be dug.
All right. And what do you do, I should know this, but are the specifications for your pool filtration system here?
I didn't see them in the read.
Because we have a sort of a general issue. We're actually pretty user-friendly in terms of working with people. But one of the things that we take a look at pretty closely is the water discharge. Because if you're discharging pool water when you backwash, that's bromide or chlorine or something going into the wetlands.
Right, so our plan is to have a saltwater pool. I mean, I think the less chemicals are needed, you know, just for the people using the pool and everything. But I know it still has chlorine basis, but the salt water is supposed to be less intensive than the straight chlorine pool, so we wanted to go that route.
It is, and that's great. But if you're discharging, that can be a problem. And there are self-contained systems that don't discharge. They don't backwash. They have, I guess, cartridges used for filters, and you replace the cartridges. So there are some sealed systems. Because right now, I can't tell where your pump is from
So if you
this.
look behind the garage, all the pool equipment will be right back there. There's a little 4x8 pad.
It's great to it gets it away from the house, but it gets it closer to the, both the resource area and also much closer to the drop-off.
So if it's a self-contained system, does that have, is
That's
that
not
irrelevant? Okay, because I
No,
think
it's-
that's, I mean, our intent was to go with the least invasive, if you will.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to harm the environmental, you know, have an environmental impact
Yeah,
either.
if you can do a
But-
self-contained system, that's great for us.
Okay.
Because you're not discharging water anyway. But I don't know the cost, if there's a cost differential, there probably is, but I don't know what it is. So I'm not just saying, oh, do it that way. Do you know?
I do not know, I'm sorry.
But John, to get back to your other idea, the lateral stress that a pool would put on the edge of that cliff, how could an engineer evaluate that? I mean, you're
Distance.
digging down,
Well, you just do a soil test to see what it is and see if it can withstand the lateral pressure. I mean, that's what
I'd be
they do.
concerned about that.
Looking at the cliff itself, I think there's more ledge than soil there. So they may be digging out ledge, which you don't have to worry about lateral pressure in that case. If you go there and look at it, you'll see that there's a lot of outcroppings of ledge very close to the top of the cliff there.
Well, that's good news and bad news.
Yes, good news for us, bad news for them.
For the guy digging.
If you have to blast, then that's another permit.
Right.
You need a blasting permit.
Right.
And sometimes they can drill out ledge and sometimes they have to blast.
Exactly.
So,
But they don't know what it is yet in the location where they want to put the pool. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
This would be the first step, and then,
And you have an engineer who's working with you on this, Mr. Brooks, is this the company?
yes. So Brooks is the land surveyor, and then all of the work will be done through, it's RHC, it's on the contractor's on the other documents. It's RHC contracting by Pat Head. And we have a architectural engineer as well, or an architect.
Yeah, I think I'd be more comfortable if an engineer actually specifically addressed, this location, for you as well as for everyone else, that would not be an issue, that they have.
I'm sorry, can you, I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
That an engineer would look specifically that, considering you're 20 feet up from a drop-off, that the pool would not be impacting the side of the cliff at all during either the construction or as it's finished.
Okay.
It's the level of confidence of the stability of the slope, I guess,
And I-
really.
I think what you're looking for is a geotechnical engineer, not a structural engineer. That's what I would imagine. A geotechnical engineer who actually looks at the loading capacity of the ground itself.
I'm sure that's true, but I should think a structural engineer could do it as well. Because they're the ones that put in footings,
Yes.
right? And I don't know that you'd need a footing because of what you just said. I mean, the fiberglass would give you the flexibility, but if you had a problem with the ability to withstand the stress of the weight of the water, then maybe a footing would be required, just to kind of build it. It's almost like a retaining wall.
Right.
To keep the water,
Right.
the weight of the water up on the upland side. But I don't know whether or not you need a geotechnical engineer as opposed to a
Well,
structural.
I should think a structural engineer would say, I can't answer that question, or I can, and if he couldn't, he'd probably refer to this other
Geotech.
type of engineer to get an opinion. That's what a good lawyer would do. Didn't know the answers.
So in
Really good answer.
in terms of what's
It's not like
being,
We always need the answers.
where do you see the sort of the finished level of the pool relative to the land around it? Are you above it, or are you meeting the grade, or?
So on the side closest to the house, it would level, and then there would be sort of a retaining wall on the far side, closer to the bank.
And then step down again, or would it just be, would you be at the level at that point?
So there's, you can see on the backside there, there's this three-step structure.
Yeah.
And then the ground does sort of gradually slope for a little bit, and then before it
Yeah,
goes
so do you
over
see
the-
yourself sitting a little bit above that?
Yeah.
And so it looks like there's a gate proposed at the back,
Yes.
and so are those circles, those are grades,
Those are steps.
those are steps, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, and so it'd be kind of three steps to get up to the level.
Okay.
So I'm lost.
And what's your-
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but before you leave the retaining wall, where is that?
This, the semicircle
On the,
on the north, on
These
the
are
far side?
I know where the steps are.
West
If you've
side.
got a, if you've got a
retaining wall
drop
would
down,
be-
So what,
But we
what
don't
do you
have
think your
it
change
on
of
the plan.
elevation? No, not yet. Right? You don't know exactly what you're gonna get, where you're gonna be yet in terms of exact, or in terms of elevation change? Or are these pretty accurate?
I don't think that the
Was it-
elevation of the pool decking is shown on this plan.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
that's what I'm trying to figure out, where
Might not be,
where the
but
deck
It's not
sits.
shown. But you say it's even at the east side
yes.
toward the house? And it will drop down 3 steps on the west side. So the retaining wall is that double line on the west side,
Yes.
as I see it on the plan.
7 inches, 21, so.
well, I
Yeah.
agree with where it's gonna go, but I think it needs to be designated by the engineer that that is a retaining wall, and we need to know the elevation change from the top of the pool to the, whatever the grade is.
Yeah, I'd like to see him with fully developed engineering plan.
Yeah.
If he has a basis for it, he can just move it out.
Do you know what the patio area is? Are those pavers, or is it, we're looking at impervious surface, and I don't know if there's a drainage plan as to where that, there's a lot of impervious surface, I think.
Yeah, they're intended to be, so part of this will be taking out existing impervious surface.
Okay.
And we'll be putting in pavers, so it would be permeable.
And it's noted the number of 600 square foot plus or minus hardscape around the pool, permeable, and then 650 permeable hardscape at patio, and then 58 impermeable pad for the outdoor kitchen, and 32 impermeable concrete pad for pool pump equipment. So that's pretty clear.
So John, this is the existing, you're taking out this.
There's a little corner, it's actually L-shaped for the outdoor kitchen. That's the impermeable, and then the concrete pad for the pool pump is also impermeable, as I see it. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Thank you. Yep. Those 2 areas.
Outdoor kitchen,
Yep.
getting to be like California.
How much of the driveway are you taking out?
Pardon?
It says you're reducing the paved area, but how much are you pulling out?
So it's about 22 by 22,
Okay,
because it kicks around the driveway. If you go back the driveway,
Yep.
it goes off to the left there.
Like
Currently.
house.
And the other plans that we'd submitted show sort of like the color drawings and the dimensions of these.
Yep.
I'm trying to see whether or not the proposed outdoor kitchen is on the plan that you just handed out.
it is.
Right here, John.
Yeah, it's the
White
L right
space.
here.
L?
It shows it white.
And it's labeled as well.
That's what I couldn't find.
It's a
Outdoor
very
kitchen,
small
I
font.
see it, I get it.
Right.
And then there'd be the space in between the pool and the patio would be planting beds.
And a pizza oven. We're all
I
giving, you
have
know.
a specific request.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? So I think we have a request for a more detailed engineering plan that'll show the elevation changes and the location and the size of the retaining wall at the, I guess that would be the west side of the pool, closest to the river. So those details there should be added. And
for elevation changes, you're talking about between the ground and
The top of the pool or the
okay.
top of the patio. Right, correct. And then we need some assurances that, you know, the lateral pressure from the pool won't be a problem in terms of the cliff.
Stability of the,
And I think more specific information about the pavers, are they impermeable, between, or how they're being treated?
Okay.
That's just more of a description, and you can
Like
give
dry
us the
lane pavers?
manufacturer's specifications, that they generally will tell you that.
Yeah.
And
We
then-
had, we did a project at our other house, and we used tumbled pavers, and we went through the full process there as well, so we know the pavers we'll probably use.
Okay,
Um,
that's good, okay. And then can you give us the manufacturer's specs for the, if you decide on using a sealed system?
Okay,
And if not, we need real detailed information on if the water's gonna be
the water.
filtered and discharged, you know, where's it gonna go? How are we gonna take care of it? We probably need some kind of a stone catch basin or something to make sure the water doesn't get to the... Anything else? Are there any abutters or members of the public? Yes, come forward and just use the mic if you would. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Mark Day, and I live at 70 Cliff Road. And so we are immediately south. We're to the left on the various diagrams that you have. And I just wanted to mention three areas of fact that may or may not be relevant to the discussion. One of them is, that we touched on a little bit, is that the cliff is a relatively complex beast. It has had some erosion over time. One of the ways that we know that is that there are the remains of a stone wall along it that was undercut over time, and a previous owner told us that it was indeed an intact wall at one point. And so it's not necessarily that the cliff is disappearing as we watch it, but over substantial amounts of time, it has eroded away.
When you say it was undercut, was that a natural process or some kind of construction?
Oh, well, we don't know of anyone deliberately taking it down.
Okay.
It appears to have simply fallen down, and there are still pieces of it, so I assume that no one deliberately took it down. We certainly did.
Is that suggesting that the cliff was somehow partially terraced to prevent?
No, I think it was just a property line wall.
Okay.
I don't think it was.
Good. Thank
but
you.
But I don't know enough to be sure of that.
Okay.
It just doesn't look like terracing.
Thank you.
The other, another possibly relevant point is that we have a garage below grade, which is just to the left of the patio. And so it sounds as though there's already concern about runoff and water, but we would just want to note that we have a very vivid concern about the possibilities of things getting worse there.
This is your garage.
This is our garage, yes.
Can you tell us, qualified, I'm probably not an engineer or an artist, but can you just indicate where you'll be at? I think you're on the...
Let's see. So roughly speaking, the garage, I think we worked out that we are roughly, the garage is sort of here. I mean, it's under our house, so our house continues this way.
so your garage, you drive into your garage underneath, well, not
We
drive
don't
in.
actually have space, but yes.
Yes.
That was the original
It's
principle.
a type of, yes.
I probably put this a little too close. There's a porch that extends out from the house, so it's perhaps a little bit.
All right, and the driveway comes right off the cliff?
The driveway wraps around, so it comes off the cliff, comes back.
Oh, it's the driveway's on the other side.
The driveway's on the other side.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that
Not sure if
helps.
that was on-
It is helpful, because what we're looking for is runoff, and if it's, that's why I asked the question about whether it's pervious or impervious.
Sure.
So we don't want, if there is runoff, it's easy to direct. You can put a cul-de-sac chamber or a catch basin, I mean, a stone basin, something. So it shouldn't be a problem, but if there is runoff heading in your direction, but is it, you're lower, the garage is lower.
Yeah, the garage is sloped. It's quite a bit lower.
How much, again, we're not using a yardstick, but ballpark, is it 2 feet or 10 feet?
No, no, the garage is the same level as the basement. So, the base.
Head height plus.
Head height plus here.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably, it's at least 5 or 6 feet below grade.
Is there a runoff issue now?
Well, I mean, we have drains in front of the garage that deal with the water that comes off of our backyard and our driveway. And so it's not as though the challenge of water coming down that slope is new.
And where do the drains discharge to, if they do discharge?
They discharge out to the river.
They do? Oh, so you're eroding the cliff? Sorry.
Yes,
You
yes.
can resist that one.
Oops.
But that's legacy.
I understand. Just wanted to understand what the system was.
Yes, the system basically is that the water comes down the slope toward the garage and goes into a drainage system and it goes back out.
Sure. Okay.
So it's gonna go anyhow.
Where it was going to go anyhow, yes.
So do you see more water, and this might just be a function of the way your driveway set up, or, I mean, do you get surface flow from your driveway, or do you see, like, your downspouts from your house, what's the general flow direction if in the high rain events, which way does the water run? Does it run down in that direction, or does it run more? Because I'm just looking at the surface elevations, and it does actually look like for the existing conditions, that the 50-foot elevation is more on your side, and then it drops down lower on the other side. Is
I'm
that-
not sure I know.
To the north and west is what you're saying, is that correct?
And so I'm just trying to get an understanding, and again, we would need to look at any grading plans and to see which way, the surface flow goes.
Well, I mean, again, when it rains, there's a lot of water coming down my driveway, there's a lot of water coming down my downspouts, it's all going
Yes.
out to the river.
And you don't want
But
that
I
added
feel as though
to.
I'm not answering your question.
But is there any water coming from the subject property toward your house?
Not that I can tell.
Okay.
It's-
That's what.
Oh, hold on one second.
minute.
And so ultimately, that's the condition that you'd want to maintain, is that you don't want it
Yes.
adding to that
That's right.
exacerbating
I can
condition.
deal with the volume of water I'm currently receiving, but I wouldn't want to have to deal with more.
Okay.
And then the last part, which I think the commission did already touch on, is that the area is rocky with a lot of ledge. And so there's a concern about whether or not the construction of the pool might ultimately require blasting and what kinds of impact that might have on our house, or the area, the stability of the cliff. So those were the things that I just wanted to be sure to mention.
Mr. Day, in terms of the stability of the cliff, plans that we're looking at, the pavers look like they're only about 10 feet from the edge of the cliff. So is there a concern that the cliff could be eroding after a hurricane or a bad storm or over a couple of years?
I don't have any solid basis to say how fast the cliff is eroding. I'm only wanting to note that it's not, it is largely chunks of ledge and outcroppings, but there are parts of it that have clearly gone away within relatively recent history.
I honestly think a lot of this would be answered through a, geotechnical or structural.
That's entirely
you know,
possible.
So, yeah.
So an engineer directly to
Right.
address this, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if the opinion that the slope is going to remain stable, and, if they do look to see if there's any ledge or, that'll answer a lot of your questions. I mean, if you find out there's ledge 2 feet down, I mean, that might, I don't know whether or not you'd want to proceed with that or not, I mean, that's.
Had
so-
cost estimates on, or
Yes.
suggestions given
that'll-
on what it takes to move ledge, so.
Yes.
Would
So,
it be helpful to everybody, all parties, for a site walk?
of course.
Yeah, we had talked about the 29th.
That way we can
John.
physically
Would that work for you?
better understand.
It's not this coming,
Yes.
it's 2 weeks towards, okay,
Right.
September.
I'm traveling, but I'll be back for the night of the meeting, so, 29th. So do you have a site walk on the 29th?
We said we would look at Milton Woods
On
on
the
that
29th?
date.
Do you have a time that?
We don't have a
second,
time
19th?
yet.
I'm just trying to order it, because if we come out and visit your home, is that okay?
It is. I coach a fourth grade girls soccer team, so I just want to, we have games on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, at 8, we usually start at 8, and I don't think yours will be lengthy, so, and I don't know about Milton Woods. So maybe we could do
It
this.
maybe longer, Milton Woods maybe a little bit longer.
So can we do 8 o'clock Saturday?
Oh, we could do the end if it's better for you. We could do like 10:30 or so.
My husband could probably be there at 8 o'clock. I also coach my son's soccer team, which is at 8:30. The end of the day, I think we have an away game that week for the girls' travel team, so. So the morning would probably be
It's a
better.
very small site, easily seen. I've been out there and taken a look at it. That's why I told you about the ledge on the cliff.
Sure, so if your husband is in, you think he could be there at 8 o'clock, and we'll be in and out and
8 o'clock on Saturday, yes,
on the
29th,
on the 29th.
29th.
And that's a public meeting, so we can make decisions right there. I don't know how long it will take you to get an engineer. To get the specifications for the pool, the pavers, you may already have that.
I think there were other
Oh, there are, there
neighbors.
definitely are,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm just saying what we can do on this site walk, because it's a public
So if
meeting.
we get that information.
If you
present it to
can,
them.
we can
Okay.
speed the whole process up.
Okay.
Right. But there may be other abutters or citizens that would like to ask a question, make a comment. Sure. Come forward, if you could use a microphone, that'd be great.
Hi, my name is Mark Breslin. I live diagonally across the street. Been there for over 30 years. I think my concerns are mostly environmental, and I tried to do a little research on this. I went and spoke to Pete Jackson, who's a landscape architect who lives on Capon Street, and he's been involved in a lot of these types of projects. And I just want to know what he thought. I'm an architect, and I did an addition on his house, and I just wanted to know what he thought about this, because I'm not an expert in this. And he said his concern was with the salt water, is that the salt water, if it was to run down that cliff, would destroy the vegetation. So actually, he said to me, chlorine pool would actually be better in that case, because that is a clear water. Salt water, I think, stops at the dam, so it was all clear water at that point.
You're talking about the Neponset River.
Yes,
Florida.
So-
We don't want chlorine.
Right,
So-
but he
That's not a good
said,
thing.
he said the salt water is worth.
But if it's a closed system,
It's close.
Yeah, well,
it's a moot point.
That satisfies me,
Okay.
it's a closed system
Yeah.
when it comes to that. I think the other thing is, I'm concerned about the rock in that area, is that, as I said to you, I'm an architect. I've dug holes numerous places in that neighborhood. Matter of fact, directly diagonally across the street from the Gaffneys, the Farrell's house, I designed and constructed a 2-story building, 2-car garage below, and a master bedroom suite above. And when we did dig that hole for that, we only had to go down 4 feet. We hit a massive boulder. And we had to come back to the town, and we had to get permission to attach to that boulder. It was probably 3 feet below the ground, and we had to pin it, and, Joe Prondak approved that. and we had to form around that rock, which was a pain in the rear end, but we finally did and attached the rock and built the structure above. So I can just say from my experience that that is a very rocky neighborhood. And the other thing that I noticed back there is that that stone, I think most of it is called pudding stone.
Waxby, pudding stone.
Right, it looks like big stones and concrete.
Right.
And from my experience
Pressure.
of digging
Glacier
holes, it fractures very easily. So that, if you go in their backyard and the Day's backyard, you see that the outcroppings are what I think are, I'm not a geologist, pudding stone. So again, my concern is about that cliff, is that if you go into the Gaffney's backyard when you sidewalk, you'll notice that their cliff is probably the steepest in that neighborhood. And it goes out, they have a beautiful little land patio, and then below there, it's 80 degree, it's straight to the river. So my concern is just affecting that cliff, and Pete Jackson, again, said that was his second concern, is that when you put that retaining wall in, because that retaining wall is going to go about 10 feet from the cliff, you have to dig down 4 feet into the ground to get that retaining wall. That is going to disturb some of those rocks, hopefully not. But that's what my concern would be. I think that in this case, from my experience in the past, we've had to do boring tests. It is not a structural engineer that decides whether that is going to be a geologist or somebody that is geotechnical engineer, which I've done many times. And I'm sorry, but Bridget, but that would add to the cost of the project. But I think that the boring should be done at the face of the wall, the retaining wall, which from my readings is 2 feet above the existing ground. So that means they have to go down 4 feet there and just make sure that we don't hit any of that pudding stone. And because I think that's what I'd be concerned with, is fracturing of the rock there. I think that we all have seen these big storms coming. Every year they're bigger. I know we had 10 inches of rain in 24 hours, and that river sometimes can be raging at that point. So I guess my concerns are environmental and the stability of that hill. I think I have those are my major concerns. I think my minor concerns are there are a lot of kids in that neighborhood, and I really do think you should build a fence, because it said on the plan, fence optional. I really think you need a fence to surround that, because Robbie has 2 kids next door, and last thing you want to see is a kid falling into that pool.
That is a town bylaw.
Well, it says optional on the plan, on what I saw.
It says per town bylaws.
Yeah, it's required by the
That's an
town.
optional.
And in addition to that, for a safety factor, again, it's additional cost, but we're going to have an automated pool cover put on. And that is obviously, people safe, you can walk over those. And it's actually, I think Massachusetts has adopted the law now where obviously the bylaws supersede state regulations for being more strict. But there are towns that allow you to have an automated pool cover and not have fences. I don't think Milton's there yet, but
So you mean when you exit the pool, the cover goes over the pool?
like when you're done for the day, you put the
Right.
pool cover
I see.
over and it's closed up
Yeah.
entirely. So
Yeah,
it's
I'm
shut
just
off.
concerned about the kids. You've got 3 kids. There's gonna be more kids.
Trust me, I share that concern.
And that's one of the best things about this neighborhood, is a lot of kids in this neighborhood. So I'm concerned about that. And I think my last minor concern is lighting, is that, is that pool going to have like floodlights at, June to August when everybody's swimming at night? I think that maybe it doesn't affect me so much, even though, our upstairs does look at it with that. I'm concerned about lighting.
Oh, I don't know if you've ever noticed, our house is completely dark at night. We
Right.
don't leave any lights on outside. I know some people do that. I don't like light pollution myself, so.
But that's it. I mean, I
Let me
think
just
that.
ask you a quick question. Are there any other in-ground pools, do you know?
No, that's a good
Currently
question.
next to
No.
the Neponset there?
That's one thing I wanted to say. I didn't want to be petty, but I walk up and down that new pathway 3 times a week with my dogs. I love it, it's an incredible pathway, it backs up to their property, you can see the bridge over from their property, it's really great. But I've walked up and down that 100 times, and I don't think there's one pool that backs up to the river off of Elliott Street.
I think the closest pool is over on Capen.
Right. Not that that's any.
So this, well, it might be since it's the first one, you know, that we should make sure that there aren't negative consequences, you know, putting one in. Looks like it could be.
What about adding lighting to the plans, because you've got an issue of upward lighting?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think, you know, for birds and mammals and amphibians, what you're doing at night is what we hope for, to have, you know, dark sky and dark areas so that animals can migrate and, you know, let's say.
That's not as complicated as you think.
Okay.
Curry College does it, and if we require that,
Yeah.
all you do is you shade it down.
Down instead of up.
So it's not, we're not throwing obstacles at you, it's just, it's a good way of controlling light.
No, and I mean, part of the reason we're coming early in the planning is because I want to make sure that these things are built into the plan, so these are good things. We wouldn't be looking at starting this until next year, so we're trying to get ahead of the curve and make sure we understand what the requirements are, what concerns are, and we address them through the planning, and obviously looking at any structural engineering issues that may preclude or significantly alter how we're thinking about it.
Okay, that's good. It's very helpful to us too to have this kind of a discussion.
Early on.
That's a good idea. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I just, you know, I'm trying to I want to be a good neighbor. But, you know, and I would never want to deny you your pool. But to me, I'm concerned about that much. That's it.
All right, then. Is there another neighbor or citizen that would like to say something? Hi.
Robert Powers, 82 Cliff Road, so it's the property just to the north of this. I grew up at 62 Cliff Road as well. I just have two quick concerns. One would just be if we are disturbing ledge, would be radon. I don't know.
Say it again?
Radon, if we're drilling into the ledge or blasting, if there'd be, you know, increased levels of radon. There are houses in the neighborhood that have remediation systems already, or up along Elliott Street.
Yeah, that's a question I've not heard that. I mean, I've heard radon issues, but not from blasting and drilling.
For a pool, it's exposed to the air, it's not an enclosed
Right.
space, so it's a lot safer
No,
if you are.
I think his concern is that if there's
I'm
any
worried about
structural
my property,
changes, you know, if
cracks
there's,
opening or.
change the bedrock conditions underneath.
Oh.
I mean,
Because I know-
it seems unlikely, but yeah, I mean, that's
Because
a legitimate
at my
concern.
mother's house, 2 houses down, there is rock, real, it's not deep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you try to dig a hole, you're getting down a few inches in some spots and hitting bedrock or ledge, whatever you want to call it. It would just be a concern if there was serious disruption of rock.
I'm gonna guess, but I bet if you use a geotechnical engineer, that engineer may have experience and could answer some questions. I mean, they're a fair question.
Yeah, I'm just worried about it in my house, you know, something changing the structure underneath the ground. The only other question I had is on the pool equipment, the noise levels in the pool equipment.
There's another fair question, but it's not an insurmountable obstacle for you, because we actually, some of these, the pool equipment you've got on the back side of your garage, there's a way to encase that with like a sound buffer. And we've actually done pools where the neighbors have come in and said, how noisy is this? Because the filtration system works, you know, throughout the.
Even if it's just a bush or something that muffles the noise.
We've done that too. We've done it from an aesthetic point of view, to have just plant a bush, and it's easy. I mean, it makes everybody happy. But the sound buffers, we actually asked for manufacturer specs on what the decibel level is of the pump. But if you have a pool designer or an equipment manufacturer, they have those things ready. And if you just ask, they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
What's the decibel level of the pump motor? And what do I need to dampen the sound? What can I use as a buffer?
Yeah, I assume most of the noise would be reflected back towards the river, because it's on the side, the back of the garage, but just that little area that is facing us, just if we're out sitting outside or playing with our kids.
Yeah, all fair questions, all
And then I just like
legitimate concerns.
second the fence, having a fence. We'd all like a fence. Yeah. You get two little ones, you know. They play with their children, we don't want them running around and running into the pool or something.
No, those are concerns, but be assured, there is a town bylaw for the fence. That's not an option.
But the radon issue is a new one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, we recently purchased a house, and the inspector had said if anybody's building additions or tearing anything up, that it could be an issue. That's just what I thought I'd bring up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else who would like to make a comment or ask a question? All right, so what we've got right now is sort of a plan for more information, gathering more data. Some of it would be manufacturing specs, some of it will be engineering advice or guidance. And we're going to have a public meeting on the 29th, which is a Saturday, and we'll meet at your home if that's permissible for you, from you. We have your permission to meet there. It's an open meeting, and people can ask questions and gather. It's fully protected by the open meeting law. So we'll be there at 8 o'clock Saturday morning, the 29th, okay? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
all. Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent 71 Forest Street. Sure, that's good.
I did some additional highlighting.
That's great. If you need to move around, that's detachable. You can hold it in your hand.
Okay. Try to be loud enough. Whenever you guys are ready.
We're ready.
For the record, Peter Lyons with Collins Engineering, representing the homeowner at 71 Forest Street. Quick overview of the property. We have wetlands on and off site shown by the green. What we're trying to do is, years ago in 1999, a septic system was designed and partially installed. There's an existing leaching area that has not been touched since approximately 1999. Currently, there's a cesspool out in front of the house, and that's the end of the system. What we're proposing is to basically finish the original design plan by rerouting this plumbing into a series of tanks and pumping it to the existing leaching field towards Forestry. A couple quick details. We're using a 2,000 gallon septic tank and a 1,500 gallon pump chamber. It's a 5-bedroom home. The tanks are approximately 75 feet from the wetlands. The existing leaching area is approximately 78 feet from the wetlands. As far as disturbance, as mentioned, the leaching bed is already in place. The distribution box has been exposed, so we know exactly where everything is. The disturbance would essentially consist of running the new lines, placing the tanks, and a rather small trench to run a 2-inch force main up to the existing system. I would say approximately 80% of the work is to be done in existing lawn area, to be returned to a lawn. There's a small area behind the pool patio that's with some light vegetation we'll be going through. I don't know if any trees have to come down. There might just be a little bit of, brush clearing to allow the machine access. I would guess all the trenching will probably be done with a mini excavator. Relatively not too invasive. We have erosion control from the 100-foot buffer along the property line and around the
It's a long
proposed
run.
tank locations. And
Never seen
then erosion control again, paralleling the force main up and around the existing leaching area. Other than that, that's about it. I mean, I can address any questions you might have.
Now, we'd need to know more specifically if any trees more than 2 inches in caliber are being cut down. And very specifically, how many and what type.
I'm gonna say no, because
We don't want you guessing, we want you to
No,
know.
yeah, and I'll give you my reasoning. The
Okay.
tanks are definitely going in existing lawn, there's no trees. I've been out to the site multiple times. The area where the force main is proposed, that we have a little bit of flexibility in. So, as I mentioned, it's not heavily wooded. Any trees over 6 inches, we usually show with the tree symbols, whereas the rest of the stuff is usually brushy, smaller vegetation. So there shouldn't be any reason we can't dodge the major trees. And it's really just this, call it a 30-foot section, where we will be doing minor clearing. I don't see any reason to get into removing large trees or anything significant.
Is this, and we've done a lot of work on Forest Street, and I think Forest Lane, is that the Forest Lane, is that the new roadway?
I don't honestly
old
know the
houses.
history of the area, but
If this is the
I
first
think
one,
there's
that's the
some
old
new
one.
houses
Field.
on the other side.
So the new ones would be, is there a continuation of that Forest Lane?
Yes, the newer ones are further to the west.
Okay.
I was out there to take a look at the
All
site.
right, so that's the one that's been there a while, that's the house.
Yes.
So generally speaking, you know, if you're improving the septic system, that's great. Is there any sewer in the area?
Not accessible now.
Have you gone to the Board of Health with this?
Yep, the Board of Health has been involved. We're going, I believe it's next week, in front of them, but we have been back and forth. We're anticipating approval and, total cooperation. From a Board of Health standpoint, the only hardship is we're looking for a variance to get the tanks a little bit deeper on the ground. All that really means from a conservation standpoint is there's not going to be a hump over the tanks. We're not changing any runoff profile of the property whatsoever. All existing lawn is going to be lawn again. We're not disturbing really anything up in the existing leaching area.
So this is a force main, correct?
Correct.
So where is your pump equipment?
The pump equipment is in the pump chamber located off the southwest corner of the house.
Okay.
The electric will probably, pretty much parallel that 17-foot dimension, come out of the corner of the house, small conduit right into the pump chamber. And that's the extent of, the electronics. You'll have an alarm panel and everything in the house, but
And when were the wetlands delineated?
you need an exact date, I'm very sure.
June 28th. John?
What's the date?
There's a delineation report at the end.
June 28th, I think.
June 28th, okay.
I did look at the
June 15th.
wetland delineation, Mr. Chairman, looked fine to me.
Okay, if we're out on the 29th, I think we've always approved lines. So can we add this to the site visit?
Yeah, let's do it. Shouldn't take long.
And again, I don't know what the arrangement is with the Milton Woods, but we could do this right after the Cliff Road.
Sure.
All right. Are there any Members of the public, abutters, citizens, anybody that wants to ask a question, make a comment? Any other questions? Commission members? It's all right, with your consent, we'll continue until the 29th. On site, we'll probably be
Bless
there
you.
by 8:30, 9:30.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is enforcement order, 1421 Canton Avenue. Welcome, hi. Could you introduce yourselves, please, and use the microphone?
Nina Martin.
And I'm Keith Martin, 1421 Canton Ave.
All right. So we've been wanting to address this for quite a while because we were there in March. I think the first week in March. We had a report. We have a videotape of filling the brook. And we were there. We did an inspection, and we issued the enforcement order. And we invited you to March, April, May, June, July, and August meetings. And with your non-compliance, the last time we were here in August, we voted to impose a fine, and the fine is $300 per day, per violation, but we only did for one violation. But so, can you give us, from the beginning, what happened?
We were having a hard time with one of our dogs staying on the property. She wasn't minding the electric fence. We were considering building a fence on the, it's hard to, I don't know directionally, but there's a fence on one side, and we were gonna build a fence on the opposite side. The side, I don't even know how to describe it, unfortunately. As you're facing the house, it would be the right side. Wasn't anything we were planning to do imminently. It would have required, obviously, permits, but, you know, I had a landscaper who works for me from time to time, who happened to call me looking for work. He needed money. I said, well, you know, we're thinking about building a fence, so why don't you come down and clean up some of the debris that's along that side of the property in preparation. So I happened to be in Portland, Oregon at the time, and the reason we weren't able to come to a meeting until, first of all, I was at the July meeting. I was sick, I stayed as long as I could. I never got a copy of the agenda. I didn't know how late we were. I was here, Bill was talking about the new animal shelter. So I stayed as long as I could. I emailed Kathy Bowen the next day, apologized and told her that I would be here tonight. Now, I've been traveling back and forth to the east, to the west coast, and had been there at least 2 weeks out of the month, from March up until last month. So there was no way I could be here. Every meeting coincided with the trip that I happened to be in Los Angeles.
You as well, sir? Were you unavailable as well?
I was not available.
And he's not familiar with the process. I'm the one who hired the landscaper. I asked I was literally doing a favor for the landscaper. He needed work. I said, you know, there was a particular area along the property line behind our shed. There was a pile of leaves, essentially, that had accumulated over the years. And I asked him, you know, please clean that up. And that's what I asked him to do. He came in, he brought a little cart. He was supposed to load everything onto the cart and take it off the property. And I was gonna pay him to dispose of it, not move it around the property. Specifically, the instructions were to take it off the property. Now, I happened to be in Portland, Oregon when he came to do the work. And I got a call from him that a neighbor had actually walked onto the property and was taking pictures of him and filming him. He wasn't aware of what it was he was doing wrong. And based on my understanding, I had no reason to believe he was doing anything other than what I told him, which was move this pile of leaves off the property. So.
What do you mean off the property? Put it in a truck and?
Yeah, that's what I said. He had brought a cart, he moved a cart onto the property, and he was supposed to move these leaves onto the cart and take them away, not move them around, move anything around on the property. Am I making myself clear?
No, I don't know what you mean by a cart.
He brought it was a trailer, essentially.
Oh, okay, so attached to a truck.
Attached to a truck,
Okay,
right. So
okay.
he was supposed to load everything onto the trailer and take it off the property. and it was a specific area I told him to clean. Now, what he actually did, I can't say, I wasn't here, I was 3,000 miles away. I just got a call from him saying that he was having a very awkward confrontation with a neighbor who we've had problems with before. And, you know, that later somebody else came and told him he needed to stop doing, issued a cease and desist. So I just said, stop what you're doing, because frankly, it was optional. It was months before we would ever actually need to build a fence. And I just wanted to give him some opportunity to make money over the winter months. So, you know, I had really no understanding of exactly what the problem was until I got, you know, some information about him moving rocks down to the stream, which was not what I asked him to do. I asked him to move this pile of leaves off the property. So I apologize. It was not what I intended. I certainly had no intention of trying to reroute the stream, because frankly, if that happens, the only person who suffers for that is us, because the stream backs up into the lower part of our property and we all die from mosquito bites. So this is a misunderstanding. I apologize that it's dragged on this long. I had no intention of creating a problem with you or with the neighbor. So, you know, I'm here to try to figure out exactly what it is you need us to do, because he was literally on the property for 2 or 3 hours. He couldn't have done all that much damage. I mean, there's rocks strewn all along the length of that brook. There has been as long as we've lived there. I don't believe he dammed it. That wasn't the intent. I think as he was moving leaves, he must have found some rocks mixed in with them and then did what he thought was right, which is put it where other rocks were. Was it a smart move? No. Understandable? Yes. Do we want to create a problem here? No. We just want to fix it.
What's the name of the landscape?
Oh, it's just a young man named Kevin Pine, P-Y-N-E. I don't even think he's landscaping anymore. I usually use Ramos to do serious work. But Kevin is just a young man I've hired from time to time to remove leaves and to weed for me. And he just called because he was desperate. He needed to earn some money. And I was like, well, the only thing I have, Kevin, is this potential, you know, cleaning up of the property line because we think we might want to build a fence. It was really...
So I saw the video. There were 3 people working, not just one. There were 3 people working.
Like I said, I wasn't there.
Okay. And they were actually moving earth in the video.
You got the video?
Yes.
Put it on. Let's see it.
I don't have a recorder.
Do you have the email?
We've invited you every month since March. It's a public record. You could have seen the video any
It cannot
time,
happen on this computer.
at any day.
We're not trying
I'm
to...
not here to fight with you. I just want to know. I just want to see what happened.
Fix it. And there was no way I could have been here. I literally was spending 2 to 3 weeks a month in Los Angeles. And I apologize, but I never wanted to turn this into a huge scenario. So I'm here to figure out what it is you need us to do to fix this. I'm not here to fight.
To start with, we need a plan. We need a landscape plan. You said you usually use Ramos. I have no idea who Ramos is, or
Roger Ramos.
Roger Ramos. I don't know who it is, but if he's a
Landscape plan for what? To move rocks?
to fix what you've done, because, you know, we've got the photographs in the file, and, you know, we have to remove by hand. You can't use a machine in the brook. We've got to pull that bank back and rebuild the bank, because it's now eroding into the stream, and it's going to continue to erode. So when we were...
How many rocks did he move?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I'll show you the pictures that we've got.
I wasn't there. I asked him to do something. It wasn't like this.
This is 1424. Do we have 1421? This is across the street of the Eustis Estate. Right. No, I don't say, I thought it was here.
Let's take a look at the boxes. I remember seeing it tonight.
7 plot in Van Nall, Flowers, 1070, got it.
just confused if, I appreciate that you were away, but are you married or partners or something? Couldn't someone else have responded in your place?
I was emailing Kathleen, so it wasn't like I ignored her. There was, I just, honestly, I was the best person to represent, because I'm the one who hired the landscaper. I'm the one who was receiving the phone calls when when the neighbor complained. So it was really nobody else who could speak to the matter.
That's him.
That's Kevin right there.
Who's this guy?
I have no idea. So do you know which rocks were there before and which rocks he added? Did you have before pictures?
I don't.
No, but we can require that you have a wetland consultant come out and assess what they believe to be, and to form an opinion on what damage has been done, and to determine what's necessary for restoration.
I mean, I just honestly, I can't tell by looking at it whether the condition of it is any different than it was before.
Well, I can tell you this. I
Okay.
was there, I don't know how many years ago, when, in fact, you invited us in and showed us the bull ring in the old house. Where that's got to be 12 years ago, maybe, something like that. And at that time, we issued a permit. And since that time, there's been filling in the backyard. Now, these go back, this is July 10th, 2009, regarding construction without permits. And so there was an issue that we had with you in 2009, because there was a sign out front saying "Phil wanted," and the
Right.
pictures of the Phil are here.
Right.
So yes,
And
I
you resolved
personally
that
have
now.
been there.
Yep.
Well, it's not resolved, because when we were out there on the inspection on the 8th of March of 2018, we saw that there were like, what do they call their wire?
Gabions.
Gabions, right, that were in poor repair. And it appears that what the problem with the fill, which is this file.
You see it?
Sure.
Thanks.
Has not been resolved. So part of the landscape plan is A, how to fix the brook, and B, how to fix the permit that we required from you in 2009, because that hasn't been corrected.
What is it exactly you would like us to do?
Come in with a plan from a bona fide landscape architect, landscape worker, somebody that is in the business, and can tell us, because we're not experts on how to rebuild the bank of a
Rebuild the
brook.
bank of a brook. What exactly do you mean by rebuilding the bank? Because I just don't, I don't spend much time back there, so I don't know what it was compared to what it needs to be. What is it exactly that needs to be repaired?
We need to restore the bank of the brook so that it doesn't continue to erode, because from the pictures that you see there with the stones strewn about in the body of the channel of the brook, it's going to continue to get worse. So there has to be some kind of reclamation, and you can't just dump like sand in there alone, it's going to wash
I
away.
understand that, I'm just still, I mean, you have to understand, if I have to hire somebody, I have to give them a scope. And I don't see how it's not clear to me what the issue exactly is relative, I mean, we don't know what the bank was before compared to what the bank is now. So how do I explain what exactly needs to be done to a landscaper?
To rebuild the bank so that it doesn't continue to erode.
All right. First of all, there's the leaves are just taken out of there, that's all that was.
Well, I don't know, I mean, we'll just have to have somebody take a look at it and go to the bank and see what they come back with.
Do you want to bring this up on the screen?
What's that?
The pictures that were sent originally.
Oh, sure.
And do you have a?
I'll forward the emails to you, you should have them in just a moment.
Okay.
Did you consider having a bond posted of some sort?
Do you have a HMDI?
I don't, not on
You don't, okay.
So that's why I'm sending them via email.
Consider having a bond
Okay,
trust in the meantime.
so I need to get the email then, right?
To ensure the work is done.
Well, we don't have I know what you're saying, and I think it's a good idea, but you have to have a contract to bond. You can't get a bond unless you have a contract. And so there'd have to be some kind of a scope of work proposed.
Okay.
And
Initially.
then, initially, and then we can bond the work.
Yeah, I have the videos as well.
You got the video there?
Yep.
Who took the video?
The neighbor.
Not
No, actually, it was
certain.
somebody from the DPW or the Town Engineers Department.
Oh,
It's a-
okay.
it was a town official that took the video.
Okay.
You connected to that?
He
You
can't,
have-
but I can.
Are there any specifications about what section of the brook or what length we're dealing with? Because it goes the whole length of the property. I don't imagine that the issue we're dealing with relates to the entire length of the, entire width of the property.
I suspect that that's true, but I know that if we start here, and it
You
might...
mean start in what is in the pictures?
Yes.
I mean, that sort of, looks to me to be about an 8-foot section where there are large rocks that, is that what you're referring to?
I think we're referring to the same picture, but
There was one
I
that
wouldn't
had-
say that's 8 feet. I don't know. Looks a lot more than that to me, but
Well, can we take a look at it and agree on what the length, because at least when I go back, I can take a look at visually where it begins and where it ends.
See it by the house, it's line up on the house.
Well, no, I realize that, but, you know, if they're gonna hold us to a repair, we need to.
well, that's why we need an expert to go out and say, this is what I can do. I'm not suggesting you have to put in some kind of a, granite wall, but there has to be some stabilization, and this is clearly recently disturbed, and it's on the video, and it's in the photographs. So if you're asking me to tell you what the distance is that I see in the photograph,
Well, not,
I
I
can't.
just, visually, I just wanna agree with you on where the problem begins and where the problem ends, and then what, it can be measured, but I need a reference. You understand what I mean?
Best reference I can give you are the photographs and the video, and we'll invite your landscape architect to watch the video. We can send it to him by email, and it may be, it's not like you're gonna build a wall from point A to, 6.5 feet to point B. It's gonna be, how do we
Well, you're not
restructure this?
asking me to build a wall, you're asking
I'm
me to
not.
repair the bank, which is
Correct.
earth, right? Earth and whatever it needs to sort of get it back to where it originally was, so that it's smoke, it flows down as opposed to cutting in, is that, am I understanding you? Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, but I don't know the technique, so I don't know if it's stone or dirt or sand or clay. I don't know. That's why I defer to the expert,
Right,
as I think we probably both should.
okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Trying to get into my email.
That's okay, I have a drive.
Pardon?
I have a USB drive that I can move it to.
Okay. Better, and I'd love to be able to see it on the screen as well, and I don't know how to do that at the same time. No idea.
This is all magic to me.
Oh, and me. And me. Anybody?
Is there video in your email?
I can't see the screen. I can only see that screen. I
Well-
made a choice earlier.
If it's in your email, you can click in that envelope on the bottom, and that should open your email.
Yeah, right here. Sorry. So, let's try it. This is a USB drive. Take it, go right to E. Down in the black. Oop, just missed it.
Oh, where is it? Should show.
Should show up. Zips, T.
Want to use your email to open that?
Pardon?
You want to open that with your email? See,
I have no idea how to do that. I'm serious, I just don't know how to do that.
I will,
Again, this is the first time I've ever used the screen.
Well, you're doing really well.
You are.
Sorry,
Actually.
I wasn't successful, though.
If you'd like to email me the video so that
I'd be happy to.
I can
sorry.
use it,
Okay.
that will be fine. We don't necessarily have to view it, although I still think it would be helpful to have some,
So our recommendation is that you bring in an environmental professional, either a civil engineer or a wetland ecologist, or somebody that's familiar with stream restoration work to reestablish what the natural bank may or obviously it's not a fully natural bank because there's development all around you, there's other people's houses, but, you know, so they can make a professional determination as to what the extent of the impact was and what it'll take to return the bank to what it was prior to the disturbance and ensure that it doesn't further degrade.
I have no idea where to find, so, okay. So it's not, this is not a landscape issue. So it's, I can't bring in a landscaper.
That's probably a second step.
Okay. Okay.
There have been consultants that have presented information here tonight that may be a reference for you, that may be able to, you know, there's people that have presented information on, that have knowledge on wetland conditions and, you know, that might be able to assist you. You might want to maybe contact any of them to see if they're willing to assist you in this.
I didn't hear anybody here tonight talking about wetlands, at least not in a professional capacity. I heard homeowners. Was there a company here that I didn't hear?
Yeah, a lot of the people that were speaking tonight were professional.
I didn't.
Yeah, I could check it out.
They were mostly surveyors and engineers, but not wetland professionals necessarily. We can provide you certainly with a list of wetland professionals. that
Yeah, I
work
mean,
in
you
the
have,
area.
if you'd like my email, I mean, like I said, I did not come here to make the problem worse.
That's good.
I just want to get it resolved.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Is that a list of?
Need a pen?
He's just asking for my email address.
Sorry.
Thank you.
There's one wetland group that specializes on restoration of riverine and coastal banks as well. And I'm sorry, just forgotten his name. Scott Wilkinson Environmental, who's on the Cape. They specialize in it, as does New England Environmental. They specialize in restoration of freshwater banks. They've done banks along the Connecticut River, for example.
So, I mean, obviously, we want to consider scale here. I mean, this isn't a very large scale project.
Exactly.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
somebody local could probably,
I'm sorry, so Scott Wilkinson?
Scott Wilkinson, it's Wilkinson Ecological Design, it's called, I think it is. But there's, you know, people who come in to our commission here, ECR LLC, out of Plymouth, that's Brad Holmes, you know Brad Holmes. Who else comes in on a regular basis?
In general, I'm looking for somebody who handles water, sort of wetland issues.
yes.
Yes, we understand.
Okay.
How about a referral from the Neponset?
Sure.
I'm sorry?
So ultimately, this will require a filing of a notice of intent. So a notice for, which will provide us a plan and an approach of how this work will be executed. It'll detail the timing and also any control measures to make sure that the condition isn't made worse by actually executing the work. So,
That's fine. So a notice of intent, and that would have to be approved before the work can actually be done. Now,
Exactly.
understand that we're now entering fall. Even if I call somebody tomorrow,
yes.
we're dealing with whatever time frame they have to get the work done, and then I have to file the notice of intent with you, which means then I have to wait for another meeting. Now, that brook is seasonal. It's not running right now. But it will run again over the winter, so if there's any damage that's gonna be done, it's gonna be done
So
over the winter, so.
would recommend
we've
that-
gotta get it, I mean, I have no problem doing my part as quickly as I can, but it will be exacerbated if we don't get this
So if
resolved
there's,
before the winter starts.
if there's any recommendations from an environmental professional to provide any immediate stabilization, then we will entertain that as quickly as possible.
But my guess is that it would still have to be heard again before any work can be done. We would have to.
So if there's-
You are correct.
This is your vehicle, right? This
You are
is the only
correct.
time you're together, so,
We meet twice a month. Our
Okay.
next meeting is September 29th. That's a public session. we
and is
meet-
there a time frame before which you meet that the plans have to be submitted? Like, is there a waiting, do you understand what I mean? Like, if I
You're
need.
supposed to get plans in 7 days before our meeting,
Okay.
but to be honest with you, nobody does. I mean, if we get them 5 days before, that's great.
Okay.
Sometimes people walk in and hand us the plan.
I see.
But we do need it, we have to look at it, and if we just get it that night, we're probably not gonna be able to resolve it that night.
Okay.
So if you can get it to us in advance of the meeting, we will look at
Yeah,
it.
I don't know, I don't think it's realistic to expect that I'd be able to have something in 7 days in order to give you 7 days to review it before a meeting 14 days from now, but I'll do my best, and what I can do is I'll forward it to Kathleen as soon as I have it, and then we'll just try to get on the agenda as quickly as possible, because, like I said, I don't want to wait, because whatever issue is, there's no, the brook hasn't run since probably May. So thankfully, whatever situation was created, the damage that has been done. If we wait until the spring, between, say, December and April is when the greatest damage would be done from runoff. That's when the spring, the brook is active. So it would make the most sense to try to get it fixed before the winter.
Yes.
So let me, I'll get on the phone, see what I can figure out, and try to get some plans into your hands. So, I'm sorry, you said your next meeting was September 27th?
29.
29th. And then after that?
October 16.
Okay, that's more realistic, I think. But we can't do anything until you had a chance to review. And then, the notice of intent, I'm guessing that it could be approved, that if you've had a chance to review it, it's presented, say, October 16th, for argument's sake. If you approve it here, then the work can be done immediately after, or is there another waiting period?
Well, that's a legitimate question, and the answer is you can, there's an appeal period if a butter or a neighbor or anybody actually can appeal it within an additional 21 days.
Okay.
But if it looks like a good plan and we're behind it, we support it, I can't imagine anybody appealing it. So most people will take the risk of an appeal and start.
Okay.
Correction, 10 days. 10 days.
10 days.
Sorry, I said 21, you're right.
Because, I
10
mean,
days.
October 16th is, it's late. Because even then, getting somebody to do the work could extend into November. But it is what it is. All right.
Any questions from abutters, members of the public? Hearing none, we'll await a call from you to either Kathy Bowman or to Steve Ives
Okay.
with the plans, and if you have any difficulty finding an expert, then please call either Steve or
Kathy for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
that's right. That's right.
Sounds good. Thank you,
All
gentlemen.
right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Did I give you photographs?
I didn't take them. includes this.
Welcome back. Next on the agenda is notice of intent, 740 Randolph Avenue.
Why don't you step up?
Sorry, email address.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll send it at my convenience.
That's right.
Yeah, it worked the first time.
20 days.
Second time.
Okay. This is the.
This is the
Milton-
animal shelter, 740 Randolph Avenue.
It's on, so you have to do something on that.
F8?
Rise above.
F8? I think it's F4.
Scared too. Yeah. Scared.
There we go.
Plug it
Oh,
in.
good.
Okay,
Wonderful.
we'll introduce ourselves first. William Clark, Planning Director for the town of Milton.
Jeff Kane, engineer, LAL Engineering Group for the project.
Welcome. Since our last meeting, we had some concerns with the way the plans were. We asked you to make some adjustments and revisions, and I think you've done that. Can you go through what changes you've made to the proposal?
Sure. You would ask us to do 7 different revisions to the plans and the notice of intent, and I'll just go right through them here. The first one you had was to revise the vernal pool boundary. We had shown on the plans of the previous filing up by Jill Kathleen that there was a vernal pool, and we had incorrectly shown the limits. We had shown what was the erosion control line from the previous filing. If you see the plans, and I have the screen behind me, we've highlighted it in yellow. We've now changed it to extend into the easement as it did show on those previous plans. So that would be the correct alignment of that vernal pool buffer.
Great, thank you.
The second one request you had was to move the refueling area that we had shown on the erosion control plan and the snow storage we had shown, move both those areas outside of the 100-foot buffer. And if you look at the erosion control plan, down the lower right here, initially we had that projected into the buffer. Again, you'll see the yellow line is the buffer here. We moved that outside of the buffer. And the snow storage area, we have moved, and again, you'll see the yellow line is the buffer here. We have snow storage located here, 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 in this area. So all those areas are outside the 100-foot buffer. The fourth item you asked for was to add the state performance standards to the wetland area. That is this buffer zone here. In the notice of intent, we submitted a revised notice, the whole package. We did add that into the, we did add the state performance standards in now. I don't know if anyone had a chance to review them, but they are on page 7 of the revised notice of intent. I wasn't going to go through each one of them, but pretty much it's, since we're not doing actual taking or actual work inside the resource area, the performance standards from the state are really work inside the resource area itself, so we're not doing anything there. The other issue you asked for was to add the Conservation Commission on the list of recipients of the inspection reports for the stormwater management area. That has been added in attachment D of the revised notice of intent. Page 2 if you want to look it up. But we have added a sentence to the maintenance program stating inspection and maintenance log sheets indicating all work and inspections will be furnished to the Milton Conservation Commission as well as made available to town departments upon request. So that has been added into the O&M. The other issue I had was you asked to remove the phosphates from the fertilizer from the turf maintenance plan. And under the same maintenance program, attachment D of the revised notice of intent under the turf maintenance plan. First item is use fertilizers. The use of fertilizers containing phosphorus is prohibited. So we just took all the phosphorus out of the fertilizer. Didn't get involved in low percentages or starter fertilizer, just took it all out. And the last issue we had was revise the budget. There was an error in the budget calculation, and then same management plan, last page. We just corrected the math on that one. That was the issues that we had left, the outstanding issues we had left from the last meeting. The only other item I want to bring to your attention is a change in the plan. Initially, if you look at the parking area we had in front of the building itself, we had initially had parking, head-in parking off the right-of-way. We had 9 spaces between the 2 entrance drives. At the request of the town...
Jeff, can you hold on just a second, please?
Go ahead. Two.
This is the initial filing we had. You can see we have head-in parking between the 2 entrance drives here. And at the request of the town to keep the mature vegetation in that area, we've eliminated the parking, head-in parking. And we've gone to just a parallel parking strip with 3 spaces along the front here. The idea is to keep all the mature vegetation in this middle area, provide a screening to the golf course and to the front roadway. So we've eliminated, 6 parking spots down here. I think we can get by with just a parallel parking here. And, we do selective, when I say selective clearing here, it's more just to kind of get this edge here established so you have room to park the cars and actually open doors.
Okay,
But again, the idea is to keep all the mature vegetation in the middle.
That will accommodate clients, staff, and volunteers?
We still have the ability on the way up this road here, the right-of-way is already cleared. You can actually park cars on this gravel strip pretty much all the way up if you wanted to. So there is volume for spaces on those occasions that you do have a larger event.
We still have 9 spaces on the inside, behind those trees, plus the animal control officer has a garage spot. We also have you could park in the road, you could also take and park down in the area where our staging area is. That area right there, that area is already, it's all cleared out. The animal shelter is not a high-use facility. At any one time, you may have 4 vehicles there. I mean, that's 4 vehicles and it's busy. Usually it's just 1 or 2. So having the 9 spaces in the front and having the space inside for the animal control officer.
In the afternoon, when high school students are in and so on down the line, it can get pretty busy.
We have the access road itself to park on.
Now a newer building, it's attractive, more people will
More
come.
people.
Sure.
We still have the road, we
But
still have
you-
the access road to park on.
But you've got great additional parking space. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, the access road is a driveway into this building.
This whole strip up here.
So
that's the only-
you'll keep the staging area clear then?
Yes.
Thanks, Bill.
So that would be the only material change to the plan. The other issues were just items that you folks had brought up that we believe we've covered, so.
Good.
Any questions from the commissioners? Other abutters or members of the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment? In my mind, I had an opportunity to go over this before with Bill and with Jeff, so I'm comfortable that they responded to all of our 7 requests, and they added this 8th component, which is the change in the parking, which I think is an overall benefit because leaving some more pervious surface, more grass area. So I'm comfortable to issue a order of conditions at this point, and I know you understand that we have our usual boilerplate so that the refueling and storage of equipment has to be done outside of the buffer zone. So that's why the staging area was important to us. But with that, I'd invite a motion to approve the order of conditions with those conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When do
Good
you
job.
hope to break ground?
Just talking about that.
When do you hope?
We've already gone through dig safe, we've already lined up the excavator, now we're lining up the geotech engineer for the borings. We've already done the borings, so now it's just a matter of lining up the structural engineer to look at the foundation itself. So,
Take it and pass it along.
this week, next week?
Nice.
Very good. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, we look forward to a beautiful new building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is number 7, notice of intent, 153 Hillside Street. Welcome. Could you introduce yourselves and tell us where you are with this project?
I'm Jeff Kane with LAL Engineering Group, the engineer for the project.
Marion McKettrick, the attorney for the project. Jeff's going to present the information.
Sure. Last time we met on site, we had a few other issues you wanted addressed prior to this hearing, and we've submitted that. We think we've covered the issues, but I want to go through those one by one. Again, I'll call your attention to the plan behind you. That's the revised plan as it stands today. You had asked on the site visit that we add 4-inch diameter trees to the plan. We do have them on there. I won't point out every one, but I will make some references just so you see them in this area here. You'll see a 5, see a 4 here, a 4 here. You know, so they are on the plan. They added about, I think, 8 or 9 additional trees to the removal total for this project. You had asked us to come up with a tree mitigation memo and a tree mitigation plan. We do have that. I'll hold off to the end. We can go over that, but we have submitted that with the new package. The other thing you had asked for, we had requested, if I call your attention to the plan here, initially we had rerouted the gas and water across this access road, replacing this culvert here, and tying into the services within this 25-foot buffer on both sides. We've replaced the house services on both sides of this, kind of snaking it through, and same with the gas. A decent amount of excavation over there. What we had talked about at the site visit was potentially tying in on the lot itself and reducing the impacts to the 25 and to this existing culvert. So what we're asking the commission to look at now is rerouting what we talked about, the gas and water within an easement on the lot in question here, and tie in on this side within the 25-foot. A temporary disturbance within the 25, have a construction easement here. That allows us to reduce the replacement of this road, the replacement of the culvert, and additional excavation for both services into both lots on the other side of the culvert. So we believe it reduces the amount of impacts to the lot. And along with that, we had Lenore White submit a letter describing what she believes is a non-adverse impacts to the 25. I'm not sure if the commissioners had a chance to read that.
Yes.
Okay, and we're calling out the replacement of that excavation, as you can see over here, with the conservation wildlife mix by New England Wetland Plants. We believe that would add some understory to that area. I believe we all walked out there. We see there's not a lot of understory there. So we're trying to add some plants that provide food and cover in that mix. So we believe it would be a benefit to replacing just a leaf litter that's in that area too. So between that and no adverse, we're hoping that the commission will see fit to allow us to make that connection within the lot as opposed to going around. That
What
again,
about the, I don't want to jump ahead to the tree
that's what I wanted to
survey.
get to. I wanted to leave that to the end, but
Right, and I don't want to jump ahead to that, but can I ask you, in that temporary disturbance within the 25-foot for the utility line, are a number of the trees that are on your survey within that area?
it actually didn't, we kept outside where we could, outside these tree limits. And you can see, we do have the trees on there.
I think there was a couple that were added into it, John, but not a significant number added into it. Some of the larger trees are down this area here where we're actually avoiding. And if you follow the water line through here, you're not going to see enough. We're not looking to impact the larger trees that were on the opposite side of the intermittent stream. So I don't believe it added to a significant number, no.
All right, good, thank you.
And that leaves us with the tree mitigation memo, or the tree mitigation plan. Again, we had come up with 24 trees now total being removed. And at the typical replication that the commission looks for at 3-to-1, we're looking at a 72 count tree mitigation number. And with that might be a time I want to kind of defer over to Marion.
Well, we've talked to Webster Collins about this, of course. He's the major, I guess you'd say, investor in the trust that owns this property. And what we really tried to work backwards from what we thought might be a reasonable amount of money to have to contribute, because it doesn't appear as though trees can be planted on this site. I mean, you could do something, but basically it's heavily, vegetated, and we're only disturbing a relatively small amount of the lot, although we're disturbing an area that's within the 100-foot. There's some of it, so that's why the trees have to be replaced. So we were talking about using a price or a cost of $100 a tree, but replacing at a ratio of 3-to-1, which would be 72 trees, or a payment of $7,200. As far as we can see right now, that entire payment would have to go into the town's tree fund. We don't see any really, there might be a few trees that you could put
Right.
Around the site, but we think that basically we're talking about a payment into the tree fund. This is we've added 4-inch, you've added 4-inch caliper trees to your total, which we hadn't looked at in prior projects. But the main problem is it's a single-family lot. It is a very expensive lot to develop because of the work that has to be done to relocate the right-of-way, which is not in the right-of-way right now. That's the occasion for removing a number of these trees. Mm-hmm. And so it's a circumstance that's somewhat unusual. You wouldn't necessarily choose to do it, but you have to do it here because you have to locate the septic system in the upland, and the right-of-way isn't in the right-of-way right now. So this particular section has to be relocated, and that means taking down some trees on the property area that's actually right-of-way area. There are some other trees that have to come down because of the relocation of the water line. And then the rest of it is the footprint of the house, which is the normal disturbance that you have when you develop a new lot like this. And that's the basic problem that the commission tries to address by having some compensation for those trees.
How many trees are in the right-of-way?
I have not broken down exactly by where they're located.
And just refresh my memory, what's the name, the formal name of the developer of the site? Isn't it Preservation or something? What is it?
Scott's
Woods Preservation.
Because something's being preserved in all of this, supposedly.
Well, at least for a while.
At least for a while.
Yes.
And this is a house that will sell for $700,000, $800,000?
I'm sure it will sell for a
$1.2
good price.
million?
Yeah.
$1.5 million?
It'll sell for a good price.
$1.7 million? So $7,200 seems awfully small. It just doesn't seem to make sense at all. It doesn't seem to be in proportion to either the concept of anything being preserved, if that's all that's being expended, and it certainly is not within our standard. It's not within our standard at all. So if this was more like, low-cost housing, I'd be a little more sympathetic. If we were like, there's another benefit involved, or if, we were preserving 10 acres over here and it is if there was some other benefit included, but I don't see that either.
I think Webb spoke on it the last meeting, and you could probably clarify a little bit, but it was taken overall in the whole concept of the preservation of the area. It was keeping houses in line with what the neighborhood uses now, as opposed to a different use or a large, dense type development. So this was one piece that fit in with the entire area as far as keeping these woods, keeping this area in concert with all the other houses around it, as opposed to a dense use or even a different type of use for that area. So though it's the last piece, this piece as a preservation is part of the whole overall picture. As Marion said, I mean, we have about a 2.5 acre lot here, and we're only developing about 20,000 square feet of that. The vast majority of this will not be touched and left alone. It is wetland, most of it, but there is buffer, and all that area will not be touched because of this. Now, if this had gone in with a different type of development, I know that was being thrown around a couple of times, that maybe even a 40B at one point was looked at, then none of these buffers would be there under the state standard. So there is a preservation that's inherent in this. Even though it's the last piece, it is kind of the keystone of the whole project, because it was one of the reasons this project went through. You had to have these lots developed. Though it's a single family, it's in concert with the other ones that are around there. So I think that's an important part when you look at development or preservation. It's not preservation in the idea of you keeping everything. You know, that would be beneficial, but to keep it the way it is, at least with the surrounding neighborhood, it is a preservation.
Yeah, I mean, I can't
So
really speak to
preservation as
the-
opposed to 40B and increasing the amount of...
Keeping the density the same in the area,
So
you know.
okay.
Yeah, it
Because of the
works.
history of this project. I mean, Webb Collins tried to explain it in a prior meeting.
I'm just trying to understand the
And I know
context.
you haven't all been here for all that time necessarily, but I will say that the existence of this lot and the existence of the other development down the right-of-way off Ford Ranch Road was all a product of a long process of negotiation with the neighborhood. This lot in particular did go through an appeal process and so forth it went to appeals court and was finally found to be a valid A&R lot, but there's a lot more that has to be done, and this is part of it, is determining what you actually can build on this lot, because it does have a lot of wetlands.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And it may turn into a proposal, but thus far, there are two changes that are concerning to me, and I think that Judith just indicated that they're concerning to her. On this tree replacement, if there are 24 trees times 3 is 72, you wanted to replace them at $100 per tree. Our standard is $400 per tree, and the reason is we put $250.
It's actually 500.
It's actually 500, John.
Is it
Actually 500.
350
Yeah.
and 150? Because I think that...
I was informed by Kathy the other day.
That it's 500, okay,
It's actually
because
planned.
the difference, we allocate some for the cost of the tree and some for the labor cost for actually planting the tree. But that, no matter, because I'm concerned with the number of trees as well, because we used, or you used for your tree survey, a 4-inch caliper tree, and we oftentimes use 3 inches or 3.5 inches. So you're shrinking. We've used those in the past, and we're trying to maintain some consistency. But let me get to a concept. When we dealt with the other part of this project, that's one of the first 2 cluster zone developments. And as a consequence, a certain percentage was given to open space. And we anticipate getting the deed for the conservation restriction to either the town or the Conservation Commission.
You have it
And
tonight.
as a consequence, we actually said we would adjust that 3-to-1 ratio. And as I'm thinking through, we want to maintain some consistency, and I think there is a point, $7,200 is not a whole lot of money for, a $1 million plus house. But there may be an opportunity here, because some of this property is wet. And when we talked to Todd Hamilton on the bigger development, we were talking about the amount of land that we got in conservation restriction. And we kind of negotiated some of the the ratio, and we knocked the 3-to-1 down to, 1.5 to 1. We knocked it down considerably, but we got a lot of acreage in conservation restriction. Now, I'm looking at 2.5 acres here. Some of it's unbuildable because it's wet. So would you consider, and maybe we can find some flexibility in the ratio here, if you were to put in conservation restrictions, some of the land, you're not going to build on anyway.
Right, in other words, you're talking about having the owners create a conservation
Yes.
easement, smaller but similar in concept to the one that's being applied to the one with farm development.
John, I would not be supportive of that idea. It's just already not buildable, it's so small. I think the town needs trees. I think that at $500 a tree, we're talking about $36,000. That's at the most, $36,000. I think if the house does sell for more than $1 million and people are laughing that it could be $1.8 million, could $1.5 million, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars each increment. So what is $36,000 relative to that?
No,
It's
that's a
not that
valid,
much
that's a
money.
valid point.
It's not. I mean, I would negotiate, I'd consider, but to me, that's our starting point. It's $36,000 that we are owed, taking down this many trees that we permit them to do. We're consistent in how we apply the standards. No one is being unduly having onerous obligations. You're dealing with people who can afford $36,000. I don't see why we need to
Negotiate it all.
negotiate that.
Okay, that's a fair point. I'm just looking to see if there's a consensus on how we can approach this.
Now, since there's no regulation on this, I know you folks have enforced this as far as the trees, what is the replacement tree size that we're talking about here? Like, if we're going to replace these on site, typically what do you replace them with?
A tree that costs, it was either $250 or $350,
Okay.
so what is that?
Probably a
2-inch caliper? I don't know.
Actually, 3 to 3.5.
3 to 3.5.
Is that what you typically use, a 3 to
Yes,
3.5?
that's what we use.
Okay.
Yep. We'll be talking about that in another, well, maybe not tonight, but another session, yes.
Okay.
That have been planted recently.
'Cause-
Yes, this is state.
And in going back to what you had said, John, about the conservation restrictions, there are more uplands on the parcel. If you look where that, by cursor is in the plan here, you can see these flags here. Along Ford Ranch Road, there is a decent-sized area of upland, too. We never wanted to use this as this went back to the A&R part, because you have the river, the stream between Ford Ranch and this upland area. So
Where is that relative to other parcels where, I mean, is there a connection to, would it increase the overall size of the existing
Open space?
open space, or is it disconnected from it?
Zoom in on that.
If you look here, you're gonna see probably better here on this overall
Yep.
plan here. There is a connection. This is the Wentworth Farm Development over here in the open space. I believe it does abut that right along in this area here.
The open land, the conservation land for the Wentworth Farm Development runs, you see that triangular?
Right here.
Right there. It runs there, and then in a narrow band up towards the road. No, go down.
So it could potentially expand
Yeah,
the total area.
yeah.
Of
it-
open space?
Yeah, it would connect. This wetland area here would connect up to it. It does abut it.
Yeah, that is true. It could be thought of as connecting. I mean, the concept of creating the conservation land is a suggestion you've made. I'm not saying that, I think it's critical, but it's one way of compensating for replacing trees.
Is this wet where it's green here?
Yes,
And this is the lot that we're talking about?
right, exactly. This is the whole shape of the lot.
So where is the upland that you were talking about?
It's over in here. I'll show you, see, that little skinny piece there starts heading off this way, so that area, this area is green right here. Doesn't mean it's accurate, that's just based off of
Okay.
a, assessor's plan, so. But you can see this area is the edge of the wetland, so we still have upland over on this side, too. And it's an island of upland that's surrounded probably by wetland as well, so.
I think maybe I'm misunderstanding Jeff, but I think what he's saying is that his concept was that perhaps we would plant some trees in the upland area. on-site, rather than do the whole thing as a payment into the tree fund if it's gonna be, and that's not gonna.
Sure.
Right.
So, I mean, we might need a different proposal, because we
You could
we were
plant them
avoiding
more
that.
cheaply than. you know,
Exactly.
You could plant them
Absolutely.
probably at $200, not $5.
Right.
I mean, I don't see any reason why it would not be viewed as a good thing by the neighborhood and by people who live in the area, certainly.
We'll probably never see them.
We didn't really, we don't have a proposal before you for that. We'd have to figure out how many trees we thought we could plant. And I know it's possible to plant trees in wetlands as well.
Sure.
If you feel that that's a desirable outcome, then that might also be an option, although I don't
If
know.
you
Yeah,
have
if you
a
use a
landscape
facultative-
architect to, to
Yeah,
say,
use a
how many
facultative
little
plan.
trees,
That's-
you could.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's
I would
possible.
love to see some bald cypress. There are some on the Cape, I'm serious, there are some on the Cape that are growing just fine.
That's a facultative species.
That's actually an obligate species.
That's obviously, that's actually what we'd be looking at more.
And
so.
Atlantic white cedar, of course, are obligate species as well, but you have to protect both of those from deer predation.
Which would be a significant challenge.
I
It's the
know.
only way it works.
I personally don't
You'd have
think.
to file
I
an
think
NOI
the
for the
fences
fence
are terrible.
around the.
Yes. Because then they fence off the whole property. But I love the trees are a great idea. I don't know whether they've worked yet because of the deer. But,
It's possible.
do you want to
For blue
say that on the
skying.
tree plan that
Right.
we would come back?
I think so. I think we'd have to talk to the owner about even maybe mix and matching. Maybe he would be okay with a conservation easement, maybe some trees, maybe some payments, maybe some type of
Yeah.
combination of
A
all.
little bit of, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel
Be
comfortable
open to
saying
that, sure.
$36,000.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the commission is willing to give us the extra time to do that, I think that makes sense. We wanted to make sure that we had included everything in the plan that you had asked for.
Yes, and you did,
Sounds like
thank you.
You did,
We have
thanks.
done that. So perhaps we could come back to your October meeting.
Sounds
You want us to
good.
come to the site walk, but I don't know if we'd be ready for the site walk.
Sidewalk for,
October, we'll come back in October. Can we do that?
October 16th.
yeah, what sidewalk are we talking
Well,
about?
they have a meeting at their site walk.
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry, yeah, as I
29th.
said, we're not going to point out trees in this one.
No. So why don't we ask, we would ask you if you would continue this for the purpose of submitting a somewhat modified or more detailed tree plan. And we're gonna look at some some planting on site, but we would need a plan.
Yep.
It might take us longer, to get that plan put together, but as long as we've satisfied
That's
your other
fine.
requirements,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
okay with, the
Yes.
time frame is not compressed here, so.
And you might want to think about logistics, about how to get the trees out there, because trees are heavy, wetlands are sometimes deep. So there are some logistical challenges that can be overcome. That we plan for, that's all.
Yeah, so
It
as I
would
said-
mean that this lot would have a tree plan on file, and whoever develops it, buys it and develops it would have to follow that plan. It wouldn't
Yes.
mean, we're not gonna go out and do this.
But I think that would be up to them. They could plant some now, right?
Yeah, they
I
could.
mean, so we know what we're getting rid of, so I guess we'll have that discussion with the owners. I mean, they could want to
Okay.
do it now.
All right, so if that's acceptable to the commission, that's
Sounds
what we would
good.
ask you to allow us to
So
do.
it sounds like the other issues are acceptably handled, and
Yes.
we're just
Yes.
down to the trees.
Yes, just the trees.
Can you talk a little bit more, Jeff, about about the other lot?
The other lot.
I'm sorry,
You're suggesting that,
Oh, the leaching field is, you mean?
no, possibility of additional building here?
No, not at all.
But-
No,
Did I
no,
miss
no,
it?
no, when I was talking about the upland,
Oh,
I was just kind of referencing the fact that either we'd have an area to plant more trees, or an area that maybe it's more desirable that it's gonna be in in a conservation restriction, because it's not just wetland, that's all.
Right.
No.
And I'm open to the notion of a hybrid approach, maybe conservation restriction with trees well beyond what you proposed initially, which would be a little bit below what you were suggesting, but between the two of them, I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
you could have a restriction at $18,000, for
Yeah,
example,
something like
just
that.
to pull
Yeah.
a possibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know that I wasn't suggesting a complete swap,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. we can-
because,
Yeah.
okay.
So you would consider that possibility,
Yes.
we'll have to discuss it. I have just gone through the process of doing the conservation restriction for Wentworth Farm, so I'm pretty familiar with what's involved, and there's a certain model that you have to follow for writing the document and that kind of thing. But because I have just done that, it would be possible
Right.
if the owner's interested in doing that.
So we have three tools. We have the conservation restriction potentially, we have the tree mitigation fee that we could pay, or the tree replacement on site, and
Correct.
some type of mix match between all three potentially.
Correct.
So-
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, good. We will be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
That's
time.
great.
Okay.
Mary's not going anywhere.
Next on the agenda, number 8, is amendment of order of conditions 94 Parkwood Drive.
Mr. Mackey here. I called, never heard back from him.
All right. So there's nothing really for us to do. I mean, there's an existing order.
I also looked, there was an existing request as well. There's an existing request for amendment, because he wants to take down some, he wanted to take down some trees, I'll put it in past tense.
The white pines, yeah.
Right? And there's also an existing request for a certificate of compliance. I went by there again, was today, Tuesday? I went by there Friday, and he still doesn't make the 75% standard. I'm sorry to say. You'll hear differently a little later on tonight about another site
Okay.
that does.
All right, fair enough. So that we will continue 94 Parkwood to the next meeting? We can just carry it forward?
Yeah, might as well.
All right. Next on the agenda is request for a certificate of compliance, 333 Hillside Street.
Request from the engineer to carry forward as well.
Okay, October 16th.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is request for a certificate of compliance, 1424, 1426, and 1452 Canton Avenue. That's the Eustis Estate.
Heard from Mr. Garvin very early after our meeting last month, and he said he would check in with the landscape architect and get back to us. That didn't happen.
Okay, continue.
Yes.
Okay.
Next, number 11 on the agenda, request for a certificate of compliance, 101 Neponset Valley Parkway.
Anybody here? I took a look at the site. It certainly does not meet the performance standard.
It does not.
It does not, sadly. There are some slopes there, and the slopes are nearly bare. That's the 75%.
Yes, performance standard, yes.
Right.
Okay, that's the performance standard we're talking about, for the audience as well. I'm sorry to say.
And that, I mean, it overall, I think the attestation from George Collins here is that it was built in substantial compliance to the approved plans, but we still have to have the recovery of the site. I'm not aware that this was contingent, there was not a sale pending on this, was there?
I don't, no, I did not hear that.
Okay.
No, not at all. I don't think it's an acute issue.
Right, and we're still in a growing season, so
Absolutely.
we can keep our fingers crossed and hope that the next month
Yes.
will show some growth. So why don't we continue this one as well to October 16th?
Sounds good.
And next on the agenda is number 12, request for certificate of compliance. No, that's...
Yes.
Right.
Finally.
Finally, you got it.
Indeed.
Thank you for being so patient. I know you've been here all night long.
It is what it is, right? I'm Gerard Juskowskis, owner of 1078 Blue Hill Ave, and with me is engineer Bob Hannigan. So we completed septic systems installed. The Board of Health issued a Title V certificate. They were there, inspected, everything's fine. Completed, I'm bad with dates. It was 2 weeks ago Friday. And hydro-seeded that day. And shockingly, the grass has grown like mad. No, truly, I couldn't even believe it myself. It was
Perfect weather.
hydro-seeded on a Friday, and then on Tuesday, there was growth, and then it's...
You had expressed concern with timing, so apparently the grass heard your concerns. and-
I think the man has a green thumb.
I've been watering it like...
Stunning, absolutely stunning.
I've been watering it like a fool, sort of twice a day.
It was a special
mix that I ordered.
Folks at Milton Woods should hire you to
Yeah, really.
get some of their grass growing.
I was lucky. That's all I can say. Fine. Things worked out well. So I'm requesting, we submitted the request for certificate of compliance. I think you have that before you. Also a letter describing what happened. There's an on-site change at the start of construction. Initially, it was going to come out on the driveway side of the house, and when it was described to me, being a novice and not a civil engineer or a septic guy, they told me that there was going to be a significant requirement to add a bunch of material on that side, and I said, we can't do this. And luckily, we were able to reroute the plumbing in my basement to come out the other side and locate the holding tank adjacent to the soil absorption system. Approved by Paul Brogna. When this first developed, Bob wrote a note to Mr. Brogna asking if this would be okay. He looked it over and said, okay to proceed because there's actually less impact on the site because we weren't going to do anything on the driveway side. We didn't need to go across the front of the house and sleeve where the water line was coming in. So I was lucky there again because otherwise I would have had a bigger landscape problem. So having, and the guy who did the excavating, they came in and did a wonderful job. We were also lucky because the weather was perfect for 5 days. It was really hot, but there was no rain. So.
Where's your driveway?
Driveway's a shared driveway on the left.
On the opposite side of the work. Shared driveway.
North side.
The north side, yes.
So the driveway.
I was trying to figure out where the cesspool was, because I was envisioning the cesspool, no, I know, but it looked like it was right in the middle of the driveway.
No, thank God. Otherwise, we wouldn't be there. But yeah, so that was, it worked out quite nicely. And so what we did was I took out 2 sections of fence on Blue Hill Avenue to allow the equipment to come in and rather than going around the house. So there's much less disturbance everywhere. And the fence is back. We put seed out front on Blue Hill Avenue. That grass is growing too. That wasn't hydro-seeded, that was just the excavator threw out some grass seed himself. And even that's growing. So.
Magic grass. We have to get some of that grass.
I don't know what he used. So the guy who hydro-seeded was ECL Construction, and I don't know what he used, but and I don't know anything about hydro-seeding, or I'm not a lawn guy, I just said, they said, look, this is what we're gonna do. I said, fine.
But you struck it right with the seed in the environment.
I did, yes. I think the weather made it happen.
All right, are there any questions from commissioners?
Nope.
No.
Okay. And I know this doesn't say it's in substantial compliance, but it almost reads as if it's better than, Bob, I mean, what's your intent here in terms of the letter?
I believe it said is completed according with the approved plan, and then I listed the
modifications.
And you think the changes are beneficial?
Right, and Jerry summarized those very nicely, so.
All right. So, any questions from abutters, members of the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the certificate of compliance?
So moved?
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, yes. I was lucky.
Good job.
Thanks.
I think Jerry needs the paperwork for the closing, so if that.
Probably right there.
I don't know if that could be expedited.
Would appreciate it.
We can sign it right now.
Tonight.
Just don't go anywhere.
Stay right there.
I'll stay here as long as necessary.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You know, you're on a tight
Thanks, Bob.
timeline.
It's been like this for 3 months, 4 months. Like I said at the last meeting, if I knew, the crystal ball was broke because I didn't know.
We can give him the original if you promise to bring it back to Catherine later. Yeah,
Of course,
yeah, just to make a copy, so she can make copies.
of course, yeah. I'll bring it to her, she'll make copies, and I'll get back to
You
you.
better, because we know where you live.
I will drop it there tonight, actually, for her, and then you can come in and pick up copies.
Okay, that's great, no,
And the
fair
original,
enough. I will be at her office
tomorrow.
first thing in the morning.
What's tomorrow, Wednesday? She'll be in the office.
She'll be at the DPW yard.
Yes, the DPW. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Bye, Diane, nice seeing you.
Thank you all for your help and support.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Just
Okay,
get us
take
the
care.
label of that magic grass.
Maybe he could get a job watering.
It's a new career.
The grass whisperer.
Truly amazing.
for 333.
Yes. Next on the agenda is conservation restriction Hillside Street, Ford Ranch Road, Wentworth Farm. Welcome again.
I'm Mary McKettrick, I'm the attorney for the Wentworth Farm Development Project, and I've been working for a few months with the Department of Environmental Affairs on the language of the conservation easement for this development. The creation of open land is a condition of the special permit, but it is a conservation restriction which is granted to the towns and to the Conservation Commission. And I did sit in on at least one meeting where the commission talked about a different one for another open space development, another cluster development. And of course, I met with you last fall, and you told me to go ahead and have it reviewed by EOEA, revise the language, get what language they wanted, and then to bring it back to you. So that's what I'm doing now. There are two documents that I've given you. One is the conservation easement itself, but the other one is what's called an existing conditions report or baseline report. This is a suggested, EOEA suggests that the Conservation Commission have such a baseline report, and this is what you're supposed to use if you have to do enforcement. There isn't any particular content required. It's a description of the open land or the conservation land. So I prepared a draft, pretty much just sort of tried to figure out what I thought it might say. And I'd like you to spend some time reviewing the baseline report at the members, and then to give me comments or changes or suggestions for what you might like to have in such a report, without prolonging this process too much. The baseline report is separate from the conservation easement. This is the language the EOEA has approved. I'm hoping that it will be satisfactory to you, but you should look at it and make sure that it is, because the next step will be
If we tried to change it, they wouldn't let us
Well, that's the
anyway.
problem, you know? I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing.
We've tried it before.
Basically, they control what the language is going to be. So I will be coming, but then the next step here is that this also goes to town council, and the same thing really prevails there. Unless he finds typos or things like that, town council isn't going to be likely to change this language either. But it does have to go to town council for his approval. And then it will come back, and I will be coming back to a future meeting and asking you to sign the easement conservation restriction. I'll be asking the selectmen to sign it. Well, first of all, of course, the owner has to sign it. And then it goes back to EOEA, and the last signature is the secretary's signature. So it's a bit of a time-consuming process.
Marion, can I just ask you, when I read it over?
Sure.
There's a term that's on page 3 and 4, and that is commercial recreational activities. So in subsection 8 on the third one, it's the use of the premises for business, residential, or industrial use or for more than de minimis commercial recreation. And then on page 4, under 8, it's that do not involve more than minimal use for commercial recreational activities. What would they be? What do you mean by that?
I have no idea because this language is from EOEA, not me.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to ask, though.
I'm thinking of that exact site, and...
It has no application to this site, and, there are, this is standard language that they want us to include, but there is no plan in the special permit for any even recreational trails to go on the open land here.
You're not going to have a hiking trail or any...
It would be possible to come back and to the planning board and the conservation commission and say, this is the new homeowners association, and say, gee, we would like to have a little walking path through one of these areas. But they would have to come back to the planning board to get their approval, which I assume they would probably give. But they'd also have to come back to you and say, and make sure that the plan for the recreational hiking trail, which would be allowed by this easement, would be satisfactory. So nothing could happen unless the Conservation Commission wanted it to happen. And I think they'd actually have to produce a plan for the trail, and they'd have to say how they were going to create it. I mean, was it going to have to take down bushes or something, or was it just something that would wind its way through the area on its natural terrain? That really, the permit, special permit says that the open land is supposed to remain in its natural state, except for planting some additional trees, which is allowed by the order of conditions, it's required by the order of conditions. So, all right, I'll ask what that language means. Let me put a little note here.
Yeah, but it is important, as you say, we need to get this both correct and consistent.
And you need to
because
understand-
hopefully there'll be more of these. We had the Burke's property that has the conservation easement, that was all okay, that was
Yes.
last year.
Yes.
And this is similar, it's a little bit different, but it is certainly similar.
Is that one complete?
It is complete.
With the Burks?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
It's gone all through the whole process and been approved by EOEA and signed by everybody?
I believe so.
I
Okay,
believe so,
good.
too.
Yeah, I started from sort of the same basic document, I know,
Okay.
but, this is a different development, so. So it's perfectly all right with me if you read it after the meeting and you see something that you don't understand. But I'm most likely going to go back and ask the question of my contact, Mr. Goya at EOEA, because most of this language the specific language came from them.
Say Mr. Boyer?
Goya.
Goya.
G-I-O-I-A.
Is it, what's his first name?
That's what I'm trying to remember.
Is Joe, it's because J-O-H, but I didn't know if that was a
John,
typo.
I
It's
think
John.
it's John. I think it's John, but it's in my email.
It's not EOEA, it's EOEEA, is that correct?
Okay, we gotta change our tape again.
I used to work.
The Department of,
Executive.
the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs.
Oh, yes.
Isn't
I
it
just have to
EOEA?
flip.
It used to be that. I
Oh.
think it's changed its name. I think it's EOEA, but I will check on it for you. I'm pretty sure it's changed.
I'll put a little circle around that.
EOEEA.
Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs.
Oh,
you.
Energy and Environment, yeah.
Thank you. They added energy, yep. I knew it had changed.
All right, I'll try to remember that. Okay.
Thanks.
It's a military thing, I'm good with acronyms.
Okay.
Okay.
You found your calling.
Yes.
All right, so I know what you just said with respect to the conservation restriction and with respect to the baseline report, same.
Yeah, with the baseline report, I guess what I'm saying is, it's kind of up to you what the baseline report says, because it's your baseline report. So I'm trying to draft something for you. I'd like you to read it. I don't know if you've ever done one of these before, or...
I have not.
No. So I'd suggest that we use it as you try to do a good job with it, but, not overdo it, but it could be useful, I think, to have something like this on file for future commissions.
Should the baseline report have any kind of map or plan?
It will, yeah. The maps are not in here. I think I included, there's, the
Yeah, you
recorded
did reference
plan.
it.
Yes, I referenced it, but I'm also putting in, I still have to check now, because now, the hearing you just had on the A&R lot on the right-of-way, the existing water line, I think, goes through the conservation land, and I have to have that, I want to show that on a plan for the existing conditions plan, but I do have to double-check now. It's not going to be relocated until sometime in the future if the lot is developed. So I need a plan that shows where it is now. That's what I'm waiting to get, and I don't have it.
Right.
But I'm going to ask Jeff Kane to just give it to me. There isn't a lot that I can, other than the detailed site plan, to give you the details of this site. I have an aerial view, and it just looks like trees, which is what you'd expect for the existing conditions. I
That being
submitted.
said, there is some mention of stone walls or those sort of things. I mean, if there's any structures that are present,
They are on the plan, they are in the 22-page site plan. What you don't have in front of you is the 22-page site plan. I have one copy here, just, the Conservation Commission, and I've looked through the files for both planning and conservation, so conservation's actually tended to be better, it turned out. But you want to have this plan in your file, and it should be with this existing conditions report, because this gives you, contour lines, and it does show some of the stone walls on the existing lots, the way they are right now. Trying to think if there's a detailed planting, a proposed planting plan, but it also shows existing vegetation. That's sheet 11, which was revised by the Conservation Commission. So that's a revised sheet 11. That's also part of this 22-page site plan. So that's what you want to have with this existing conditions report. And if you need, I can send it, I have electronic copies of that plan, so
Could you forward that?
I'll send it to Kathy, or?
Yes, Kathy is fine.
Kathy's good, yeah.
So I'll send an electronic copy to Kathy, and that's really the easiest way to look at these plans and be able to read the details for now. But you should have on file with the paper plan this thing. I guess, you might have some other thoughts about how it should be written. I didn't really get any advice on that. I just got the suggestion that we ought to do one.
No, I think it's a great suggestion.
So,
It makes good sense for this, for the future of this, and for others as well.
Yeah, okay.
You've got a question.
Yes, my family property has a...
Can you use the microphone? Beautiful, thank you.
My name's Mary Noble, and my family has a conservation restriction with MDC that we did back in 1994, and they came out and did a walk and a tour, and they did the GIS points, which has been very useful. So when they've come back to sort of check and see how things are going, they just take a walk and check in on it. So that's another useful mechanism for keeping track of what the property looks like and if any changes have occurred.
What about that, is that in the current?
I think that's in the submission that went to Environmental Affairs, the GIS.
The GIS.
I honestly, there were a lot of attachments, and I have to go back and review them.
Well, she just got out a little thing, went click, 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 and we'd walk around, check and see. And so it's a very visual, very useful way to keep track of things.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I think Jeff Kane can provide me with that.
Who did?
Thank you.
Don't ask me to do it, but I believe that the engineer can provide something that you can use. You're talking about an electronic version of the GIS.
Yeah.
And then you carry it around
Just she
with you on
carries
your-
it in her.
It's a
on your phone.
GPS.
A
Yeah,
GPS.
you could literally do
GPS,
it
sorry.
on your phone.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and
Jeff will know what I'm talking about when I.
Right.
Yes.
But it's an on-site, very easy way to locate things and how things work.
Yeah, he'll want to do it in the fall when the leaves are off, because then it's easier to, because otherwise.
So is it an aerial? What kind of a view is it? I don't understand what.
Thank you.
It's getting GPS locations of
So you walk
corners
around
and-
and you locate it through
So-
the GPS where you are at that particular site. So she knows what it looks like and if there have been any changes.
What's the difference between that and the survey, and the surveyor's?
I think that if I were to guess, that might have to do more with the habitat value or the
Quality of the woodland.
Yeah, so you can mark where a
more-
particular type of tree is.
Exactly,
or-
more detailed with regard to the biological
So it
things.
sounds like that would be a useful thing to do on each of the open land areas.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, that's what I've been trying to figure out. is
It's
how you-
useful also,
to
Marion,
move
if there are meadows
Let's move on.
and fields, and to see whether or not they've been wooded. There's been encroachment.
Or if
and
we
that-
built anything we weren't supposed to.
Oh, that would never happen.
So it
Well,
would
that
be,
Kind of goes to the heart of an
That's-
existing conditions of plan.
it
yeah.
would, but I think more along the lines of a habitat assessment. So,
Yeah.
um,
We didn't do a formal habitat assessment, that's one of the things they talk about, but.
Oh, they did.
But it does seem to me that you could do something like that, but I'll just have to talk to him about how we would. I'll talk together.
Sure. All right.
All right, I'll figure
Marion,
that out.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Mary, thank you very much for your comments. I think they were good ideas.
All right. I'll find
Perfect.
out what those words mean. and-
All right, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is additional business. Do we have any?
Hendry's.
Yes. Hendricks.
Hendry's.
Yes, I had that as number one
Yeah.
Number one?
on my list.
Okay. My concern was that, wait a minute, because I tried to put them in a place that I wouldn't lose them.
What are you looking for, John?
I had some,
Thank you for your good work.
oh, thank you very
Thank you.
much. I had asked Kathy to send me the demo, the amended demo special conditions.
yes.
And I've got 45. And it says, before any construction or demolition commences, the water retained in the basement of the building, whether in the machine room or elsewhere, shall be tested for chemical contamination by a DEP-certified lab, and the test results shall be submitted to the commission prior to the commencement of the demolition. That's 45. 46, if any water so tested contains contaminants, including either hazardous materials or petroleum products, the water will not be discharged into the Neponset River or Pine Tree Brook or any drainage system which leads to those waterways, but will be pumped and trucked off-site to be disposed of properly in accordance with the applicable local and state regs. 47, the effectiveness of the check dam and multiple filtration systems for the removal of suspended solids shall be tested by analyzing water samples taken after the water has passed through the filtration components, but before the water is discharged into the catch basins. Testing protocols shall be based upon DEP standards, shall be submitted to the commission for its approval prior to the commencement of the demolition of the buildings. The testing shall be performed on the first day of the demolition and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday thereafter. The lab results shall be forwarded directly to the Conservation Commission agent as soon as the test results are obtained. 48, they're all about this, but 49, the applicant is responsible to contact DEP or Coastal Zone Management, inform them of the anticipated water discharge into the Neponset River. 50, the on-site retention pond, provided for in the demolition plans, shall have an impervious liner in order to prevent and protect against any surcharge of water in the vicinity of the underground storage tanks.
Are they retaining water? Is there any water retention structure?
There's no water retained on site. I've been to the site multiple times, last Friday and today.
They're just wetting it?
They're just wetting it, and the
Sending it to the-
materials are absorbing the water. There's no flow of water into
But
any
there's
of
no
the catch
detention basin. We had a specific design for the
It's
detention
not there.
basin.
There's no detention basin on site. They built one very high up on the second elevation.
For the water
On
to flow
Elliott
uphill.
Street, on that side.
On Elliott Street
Yeah.
side, that's correct. They built one up there, but the demolition people said it's useless
Yeah, because it's uphill.
because it's
Oh, yeah, okay, but there is one there then.
Well,
Because
there was one that they built, but they didn't line it or use it. The demolition company did not use
It's
it.
not functional.
Not functional. That's correct.
So there's no water coming off that site?
That's
Or
correct.
staying on that site?
No water, no, there's no flow lines,
Okay.
flow patterns into the catch basins. They have the silt sack in the catch basins, just fine. They have wattles now along
But
the
did the
east
existing-
and north sides.
Wait a minute, which one is east and north?
East is along Central. Central Street, that's east.
But
Mm-hmm.
did
Wait a
the
minute.
existing building have any drains or anything that were decommissioned? I mean, it could still be
There
discharging.
could be, I don't know that
I mean, I
about the building. I don't have any.
doubt that the water would be retained by the
catch basins?
by the material and not going somewhere.
No,
Well, no,
it seems
it's-
to be.
it's
I mean, I was
retained by the
there
material.
today.
I've been there
and
many
yeah,
times.
It seems to be.
They
I didn't
had
see
a-
any water flowing anyplace
That's right. They had a
from the
guy
site. I know.
who has years of misting experience, and that's all he did, all day long, was just mist.
Yes, that's your asbestos.
Saw photos of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and he did a good job, and there
Yeah.
wasn't any water anywhere else. I mean, I never detected
I
any
was
water.
quite
What's the
surprised myself.
misting look like? Because I saw a fire hose
It's
with
it's basically a fire hose with a nozzle.
Very fine.
It's a very fine
I
nozzle.
saw it. I went by there, I can actually give you the time that I went by there.
Was it a red hose? They were using a red hose with a large brass nozzle.
No, this is real water coming at me. This is like a fire hose.
Well, yeah, the hose is probably 2-inch hose.
No, what I'm not talking about the hose, I'm talking about the water coming out of it.
Discharge.
The discharge, it was not mist, it was heavy duty water. But it could have been absorbed, there was a lot of debris underneath where the water was being directed.
Right.
But I'm just concerned that we don't have any
The reports,
tests.
nothing
Yeah.
found.
Yeah.
I was told by the demolition contractor that he did have DEP reports from the water that they took out of inside the downstairs of the building.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
So we
kind
need-
of.
That's what I just read.
yeah.
Yeah,
We need to ask for those reports.
you need to give us those results.
Right, I will call Steve Conley in the morning and say,
Yeah.
bingo.
And Monday, Wednesday, and Friday
Well,
of the tests.
but you have to have water to have the test.
That's true.
Where's he gonna get the water?
I-
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
I'm astounded that there's no water there.
So was I.
We used to call it the swimming pool. The basement was like filled with water. Now, they've drained it, they pumped it a couple of
Right,
times.
right.
And taken it off-site, and we had an issue as to whether or not the manifest was appropriate to show where they
Sure.
discharged the water. But they did pump it and take it out. But I'm astounded that it wasn't there again.
Didn't
So-
see any. Have looked a number of
These
times.
inspections, have they been, well, not inspections, have they been drive-by kind of, or has there been an opportunity for anyone to actually set foot within the?
Oh, yeah, I've been on site.
On the work site?
I've been on the work site, oh, absolutely, with my hard hat and all. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, yeah. Yeah. In fact, I just spoke with Steve Conley at about 5 o'clock today on site. And said I was very happy with, the lack of water into the catch basins on the Central Street side. I mean, there's nothing there. It's all-
But I'm thrown off by your the east side.
The east is
North would be the
basically
track
central.
side, wouldn't it?
What's that?
North is the track side,
Yeah.
east is Central Street side, sorry. I have a
It's Central
automatic.
Yeah,
automatic
orientation.
Orientation. in
Not
my
a
head.
Milton guy. Central Ave.
Central Ave?
Yeah.
Thank you. Central Ave.
So, okay, so you're saying that crossing the tracks, that's north?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
So then on the,
That would be the north. The
South
tracks
side
run
would be Elliott
east-west.
Street.
Yeah, that's right. South side would be Elliott Street. That's correct. Yeah. And the trains were running today just fine. They've got the material back from the train station about 20 feet or so. And there's nothing on the tracks.
How long was it down for, do you know? That is, they're running the
Last
trolleys.
Friday to, I think it was Sunday, this past Sunday, so a week and a couple of days. And they've still got material there, but the majority of the large steel and rebar and metal materials are gone. Right now, they've got brick, concrete, and some wood. That's pretty much the majority of the materials. And then there's a pile of rebar still there. And they're recycling. They recycled all the other materials. They cut it to, they have their own recycler for concrete.
They get money
And-
for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yes.
Yeah, it's base for roadways and stuff.
Was there a crusher there? Because I know
Not
there was a
there.
lot of
They-
concern
they-
about
they-
the noise.
They take it off-site.
Trucked it off, okay.
Then they take the steel off-site to Brockton, where they cut it to 3-foot lengths and recycle it that way. And I guess the rebar is recycled as well.
Yes,
So there's all-
you get a lot of money for rebar.
Exactly. So it's, yeah,
goes to
it's,
China.
it was a good operation. It was a clean operation, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
And the contractor is REI? Is that, or RIE?
No, D, something or other, D and J, D and G.
Really?
Right, they have done a lot of buildings over at the South Weymouth Naval Air Station. A lot of buildings over there. They obviously knew their stuff.
And there are videos of it on the Milton scene, if you access that
Oh, really? Oh, good.
electronically. Also, I stopped by Rundle Park, drove through there. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to. It really looks good.
The trees,
The
The
tree
trees aren't in yet.
Okay.
Oh,
but the boxes are?
The boxes are.
Filter boxes?
All the boxes are done. There's a piece of plywood where the tree's gonna go at each of the sites. It's non-intrusive. It's really well worth having been done.
Yes, it looks nice. It looks-
You've seen it?
Yes, I have.
All
It's
right.
very nice.
Will it catch the water?
Steve, would you, I understand what you said, and I do remember the design of the basin was above where the
The fuel tank,
the fuel tanks were buried.
right.
Right,
The fuel
and I-
tank, concrete is still there. The fuel tank is still there.
That
We thought
hasn't
there'd be
been-
sheeting water coming off of the Elliott Street, the high side, down towards Central
Right.
Avenue.
Right.
And that's why we placed it there, because we wanted to stop the water before it got to the
Understood?
buried tanks, underground tanks.
Right. Right.
If they do the tank yank, they'll do it last. I mean, they'll.
They're
they don't
supposed to take
affect
the tanks out
structure.
until the construction begins. Everything is supposed to be down first.
Well, actually, originally, there were 3 phases,
Yep.
and then it became 2 phases.
Should we plan to look at it on the 29th, or is that too late?
It's not gonna, I don't think we need to
We'll
look
see
at
the-
it together necessarily.
Okay,
but-
we'll just
But,
plan to.
I'm curious, I'm gonna go by there again. I
Yeah,
haven't been by
I
there
mean, I
since
walked it.
Friday, I think.
Great.
I was there a few hours ago.
Badges.
Yeah.
Well, can I give this to you, because these are the special conditions?
Yes.
On the water testing, and there's some testing. I mean,
Yes,
what was
and
the
I will
residual water in the basement?
But John, weren't the tanks supposed to be coming out after the demolition?
It depends. The issue was whether or not they're gonna put a crane on top of the tanks. We didn't want the weight to crush them. We said
Right.
no, because you
Put
crushed
the
them.
crane on the other side.
Correct, and I think they did that, but the tanks are coming out now. Originally, the problem was that they didn't want to pay for the tank removal because the demolition was not part of the 40B money. That was done before that. Then, for the construction purposes, they could get from the Mass Housing Financing Authority the money, which is very cheap money. So they wanted to put it on that, and I understand that, as long as they can protect it, not change it, and as long as it gets done. So we said, okay, you don't have to do it part of the demolition. They were gonna do it in phase 2, which was the grading, and then
Right.
phase 3 was the construction. But when they shifted from the 40B project to the mixed development, they changed it from 3 phases to 2
two.
phases. So I guess it's,
So it's now coming out.
I think it's coming out now, once they get the structure down.
I'll try and get in there
Well,
tomorrow.
the structure is down, but there is a lot of
Still a lot of debris
unconsolidated
on top.
materials.
On top of
There's a lot of materials on top, lots. Probably a week plus. to just get those materials.
Such a relief to have that out of the way.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It only took how many years?
How many years, yeah.
Century.
Okay,
Does that
motion
help you at all?
to
Okay.
wrap it up.
Yeah.
And I have one or two more small items.
Oh, okay.
Ocean River Institute would like to come in and talk with us in October.
Sounds
And-
good,
And
sure.
I contacted him and I said, absolutely. Okay, and number 3 is 1439 Brush Hill Road. I have a meeting with the owners, October 1st. I think it's at 1 PM in this room, October 1st, which
What's
is
1439? Oh, is that Arthur and Susan Murphy?
Murphy, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. They would like to meet me here to talk about conservation issues with their property. I think they're going to try to subdivide the property or make a swap with the DCR. I don't know exactly what, but I know where the property is. I've seen it 25 years ago when I was working for the MDC, and I just went last week to take a look at it.
It's like the third, we've had 3 developments there. One is Avenue A and one is Hemingway Drive.
Right.
And you just go up like this and the property's in between.
This is on the right-hand side of the west side,
Fine.
closest to Burma Road.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where this is, I believe, if I'm looking at the right spot. But I will report out.
Perfect. Oh,
That's
that's
all.
good. And what was the one, we went to Henry's, and then there was one before you got to 1439? Brush Hill?
Yes, that was the Ocean Institute.
Ocean Institute, yeah, okay.
Yes, the executive director, or whoever he is, would like to come in and talk with us about nitrogen.
And I think that's what the animal shelter did when they said no phosphorus,
Right.
anticipating that we might move in that direction.
Yes,
They got ahead of the curve and said no
This
phosphorus.
is the Falmouth example.
yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I asked about other cities. Everybody is using the Falmouth example, and there's some legislative issues because the legislature said the AG said no to Falmouth because it would put people out of work. And Therese Murray got it changed that Falmouth was, what's the word I'm looking for? Was allowed to do something when other people weren't.
Exemption?
Exemption, yeah. Falmouth got an exemption through a legislative exemption to allow them to put in a nitrogen limited bylaw. Imagine that.
So, wait a minute, he was putting people out of work because the grass is not growing, so the lawn cutters...
I don't know what the Republicans think, I'm sorry.
Okay, now motion to adjourn.
You're asking me to interpret, so I had to say I can't, sorry. Sorry, folks at home.
All right, so, any other
That is the
business?
most democratic community on the Cape.
Yes, it is.
Motion to adjourn?
Indeed.
All in favor? We're in adjournment, thanks.
Great, all right. So the 29th.
29.